all gene-based vaccines, independent of manufacturers, produce the same result in the vaccinees. He has looked at 15. In the last 4 days, the number has been increased to 70 individuals who died after vaccination. These were people who died at home, at work, in the car, doing their sports, etc., etc., etc. There's no question now anymore about what is going on. And the answer is in the organs of these people. In 90%, he found clear evidence for autoimmune self-attack by killer lymphocytes.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. A lot more to talk about than I expected today, which, as you know, especially today, it's always like that, it feels, but in particular, more than the weird usual that we have today, if that makes sense. But there is a lot that I wanted to include today that I think might make this quite a long show, but I'm sure some of you like that. But we are starting late today, at least from my perspective. And so we're going to try to get right into this. It's a, later for some, I think half the audience that watches this show is probably sleeping right now, but we'll get this out for everybody so they can watch it tomorrow in general. But really important developments around most of the topics we've been covering that I think are important to make sure that you see. We'll kind of start with the follow-up, additional points to yesterday's show where we kind of left off. I mean, the major thing from yesterday's show, really it was about the warp speed discussion from Trump. And I'm still completely baffled. People that I think know better are acting like they don't know that statement he put out, like pretending that is him saying he knows it's wrong and we're going to call it out. It's just literally not what it says. And it's kind of frustrating that we have to play this kind of, make-believe game or like this weird, but it does say that, we're looking into it, but if you understand what it says, it's clearly about like, if you read it, we'll point to it as we go through again today. I don't think we're going to point to the statement, but go over the warp speed points. But the Trump basically says that Pfizer's numbers that he's seen are clearly great. He says great with all capitals. Why you then think that means he's going to go after it? I really don't know. On top of the fact that he's like completely intertwined with all the problems of that thing. It's sad. But so we were talking about the warp speed statement and how that overlapped with the CDC conversation and the shots and everything they're still doing, which we're going to start with today, and how that overlapped with Jim O'Neill in the CDC position now. And he is a transhumanist, not a joke, by the way, literally connected to Aubrey de Grey, who is the head of we went over it yesterday. Transhumanist, longevity expert, all funded by Thiel, all of which are really like obsessively focused on extending their lives. And and they're all really excited about the fact that Jim O'Neill's in that position and how he connects with this whole direction. And then talking about how that overlaps with the conversation of the kind of technocratic push that's happening. And then jumping to the end was a lot in between there, the point of the AI Gaza smart city, which if you still haven't seen that, some of these ridiculous partisans out there are doing their best to gaslight about what that is. Regardless of the new point of the information, this has been going on a long time, as you know, because you watch this show. The plan around Gaza has been reasserted at different points in the last 20 years, very clearly for like the same kind of outcome. And so the point was that this is not just a takeover, here's the new plan, but smart city, 15-minute city, digital ID, trackable, surveillable digital money. Every single part of what we've been warning about, they're planning, they say they are in regard to what's coming in Gaza. So great reset. Just like we've been telling you from a different angle. So all that's, briefly, with a lot more to it, we went over yesterday. Today, we're going to start with the follow-ups in that regard that I think are important, or technically an interesting point that I wanted to discuss that we started with on AM Wake Up around partisanship, but then talk about a point about Epstein, Maxwell, that I think you should see, and a very immediately recent development as of like the last hour or a little bit before that, where the Oversight Committee has just suddenly released thousands of documents around Epstein, which feels weirdly timed since there's a big thing that's supposed to happen tomorrow. By the way, Derek is in DC right now. We might get some live coverage about that and other things he's focusing on. But interesting timing, and we'll go over that. And Massey's kind of press conference plan for tomorrow of the Epstein victims. I think it's weird timing, but you guys can decide for yourselves. Talk about the overlap of the kind of, I guess, more on the warp speed point, as I was saying, in regard to the different additional points that I think you should see, but then how that dovetails with the point of today, which is the microarray is with the words that's used often in that, but just the vaccine patches that you've heard, that we've talked about, that a lot of us have pointed to, that Gates is adamantly, I mean, before very much so, and now again recently talking about how that's the new direction, and showing you that this is from 2025. BARDA and the Trump administration are now leaning into this direction. And not just the patches, which might not even be that big of a story to most with all that's going on, but mRNA patches, which are coming, as well as DNA versions of it. And it's just, it's the extension of the same thing. That's not what winning looks like. That's not what Maha's direction was about. And you all know that, the honest ones out there. And we'll go over that with a couple of overlaps to quantum dots and the way that this is essentially like a backdoor vaccine passport kind of idea. Like, not the first one, by the way. Same with Trump's like tracking system. It's the same idea. They're creating the kind of sidestep access to the same things without calling it the same thing. We're going to talk about Israel in today's conversation, but we'll segue between these things and the overlap between technology and Israel and how that works. And we'll talk about the infiltration of Israel and how that overlaps with the larger point of what's going on in this country around martial law, and about Chicago apparently being the next focal point, and the interesting numbers thrown out around that and DC that are pretty obviously not true. And I don't know why that's hard for people to recognize. And then we'll talk about some overlap Israel with some really hard stuff to talk about, to be honest, but stuff that you need to see. And then talk about, if we have time, any number of these sections I may decide to skip if we don't have time, but talking about Israel toward the end in regard to what's going on, not kind of with the omission for the most part of the Gaza plan, and just keeping you up to date about what's going on to the human lives that are being taken in Israel, in occupied Palestine. And it's important for you to see that. And it just doesn't slow down. And if we have time, we'll talk about overlapping points with Venezuela, overlapping points with a couple of other foreign policy conversations. I kind of almost wanted to start with this because it was so immediate, but I mean, you might have seen Trump announcing that they fired on apparently destroyed some speedboat, claiming it was a bunch of terrorists trying to Iragua, which aren't even technically terrorists by anybody's definition other than the U.S. is kind of faux national emergency. It's a gang, and they're horrible. Yeah, they're a gang for sure, but it's not terrorism. And on top of that, if they were trafficking drugs in a boat that they targeted with a drone strike, I mean, did they know they were gang members? First of all, I'm not sure how they could prove that. Secondarily, I'm pretty sure trafficking of drugs does not carry a criminal, a capital punishment of death. So this is a crazy moment in regard to what they're doing. But if we don't get into it in full today, we'll talk about it in the next show, possibly tomorrow, actually more likely the day after that, but maybe tomorrow. Just because it's insane to watch what's going on. And I don't think it has anything to do with trafficking drugs. As I've said many times over the years, Colombia, a chief ally of NATO and the United States, is the leading trafficker of cocaine in the world. And no one cares about that, except over here, we're going to make this a narrative about Maduro because every other reason they obviously have long been trying to go after Venezuela. It's pretty consistent with different reasons, like every other clumsy thing the U.S. government seems to do today. And so it's important to see that Trump is just carrying out that same old thing. The peace president, as he bombs vessels in the middle of water with no legal justification, as he continues bombing, Somalia, everywhere you want to talk about. It's not what we were promised, but that's maybe for the end of the show today. So let's start today with a couple of points that I wanted you to see that I thought were very interesting in regard to, the first one, this one I wanted you to see in regard to the independent media token. This is something that Corey shared out today. So just in case you didn't see this, I interviewed Corey about this. Actually, let me grab that really quickly. I forgot to get the interview. Shoot, I'll have to go back and grab it. I don't know why that's not popping up. Huh, it's weird. I just did it. Well, I know it's in there. I'll grab that on the way out. That's just the interview you recently did, both to be on Substack and the website. And it's with Corey Hughes about the independent media token. Now, what's important to see about this is, one, I get people's skepticism about all this stuff. I share it with you. What's interesting about this is, a few major points. First of all, from my perspective, I believe Corey's doing this for that reason. I believe Corey has good intentions with all this. That's not that you should blindly accept that. Question it all. Question us. Question every part of it. What I think is important is that this is being built in a way that is not about some gimmick, not about some, this is not about some fast money making idea. This is not how it's going to work. If people wanted to invest in this, consider it like this. I was thinking about this earlier. It's a crypto that you can buy, spend a couple dollars, spend $100, go buy whatever you want. Think of it like if you're going to donate to independent media, me, anybody else, and give them a donation, think of it in the same way, in my opinion, because this is not going to be something that you invest in and you get some immediate return on. This is a long-term kind of effort to create a grant system for independent media. That's really what this comes down to. So the idea is that the more that this grows and people buy into it, the funds that are generated will then be used to give interest-free, grants are without it, but to make sure it's clear for people, interest-free, not a loan, like just giving people money because of the board decides that somebody deserves it, whether they're making a documentary, whether they're an up-and-coming independent media person that's being censored. I'll be a part of this, and we can discuss amongst ourselves what we think somebody is deserving of it. And so the point is that is something that in itself, if that continues to work, will grow into something that is beneficial to everybody. And then maybe in the long term, by investing in this, that will grow because it's a workable, sustainable system that is helping independent media. If you build it, they will come kind of a thing, right? So that's what's very different about this. Also, I think the overarching point is that this is about trying to put money into the hands of independent media that would otherwise never see that. And speaking from experience here, guys, it is wildly difficult in this field, especially with doing the right things for the right reasons, as I would see it, to really get a leg up, right? And so this is how this was built. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to succeed. Maybe it doesn't succeed because it doesn't get enough investment. Maybe it's because it's, the way he's doing this, which I argue is the right way. Apparently everybody else is just gaming the whole thing, which I think we know the system works like that, the crypto field, in order to keep the money going. Like, he's doing this the honest, correct way. We went over it in the interview, which may be to his detriment, but I respect that more than anything. Anyway, I just want you guys to see this because I believe that this could end up doing something that could really help this field. And I really don't know how people would try to make, which I already see them doing so, something like this into something other than what it is. It may not succeed, but it's clearly built on the idea of supporting people who may need it. And that's all transparent. Now, watch it. That this is what's important, as Corey says, as he writes right there, know your team. You know who's involved. You can watch what they're doing. Anyway, I just wanted you to see that because I really do hope things like this, whether around crypto or just anything else that might not be as of red flag to people, that we can lean into the right things for the right reasons around stuff like this and stop, profiting all of the morons out there that just tap into the status quo. It's frustrating how often that happens today. So that'll be included, the link and everything else there for you guys. Oh, and then what the post was Corey starting today. Apparently I was the first one, sent out the Creator Capital Fund, which was, I guess, 1 million tokens in regard to the people that were going to be on the board. And so that's what this is about, just kind of the beginning moment of starting this up. So if you think that's something important, it's on any platform that it's existing. You can go buy some, $1 will get you quite a many because it's, 000 and so on. So if you want to support it, go for it. Now let's talk about some partisan points to start. And I think this is just frustrating, just kind of set the tone here. Nick Sorter says, and this is on September 1st, all the leftists baselessly making claims about Trump's health didn't say a damn thing when he had bumbling corpse occupying the... Okay, right. Yeah, the old back and forth, right? How fun this always is. They didn't do it when we were saying it. It's like, it's so irritating. And always, the point is, yes, there's plenty of ridiculous partisans, just like you're being ridiculous, Nick, and the other way, that didn't want to see and pretended like it wasn't obvious that Biden was drooling in his seat, right? It's stupid. And we all saw that. That wasn't a partisan thing. That was idiots who didn't want to acknowledge the truth. But yes, that was because they had a partisan blind spot or didn't care. Well, Trump is old too. Now, I'm not even remotely saying that Trump is in the same position as Biden. At least I can't see that right now. But you understand that he's an old person and he very clearly does have the issues that many other people are dealing with. And so whether or not he has something going on, I don't even care, quite frankly, unless it's something that is immediately affecting, something that we care about. For me, just the conversation swirling about whether he's walking on the steps funny happens every single time. Frankly, I'm tired of it. And so this is funny because it's basically, as some people are saying Trump might have some issues, which gets drowned out by the idiots who are going, Trump's dead. And it's all, which is part of the whole back and forth. The ones who said Biden was completely fine are the same ones who are saying Trump is completely fine. The ones that are saying Trump is dying are the one, it's the same kind of hyperbolic nonsense on both sides of the paradigm. My point is that he goes, they didn't do it when he was happening. So it's like this game of back and forth when anybody who's not in the partisan game can look and be objective about it. Yeah, Biden had senility. Yes, Trump is also dealing with health issues here and there. And whether he's old, and it's not some big, massive scandal. But I said, can we all just start making fun of all these partisan clowns, both sides? They love to be outraged back and forth about the same stupid things. It is all just so stale and tired. Meanwhile, the nicks of the world help everybody ignore what actually matters. So this is an image of the Biden kind of standing still and acting funny. Again, don't hear this as me claiming that Trump is in the same position. It's just not. But it's the way that they deal with these things. Now, to be clear, there were plenty of Democrats who were being honest about that. But see, what happens is the nicks of the world frame the idiot, moron, partisan team sport players on the other side and the mainstream media as what everybody on the left thinks, right? Just like the idiot, moron, partisan lefts on the team sport left frame everybody on the right as Jones and Nick Sorter and Pat Turp. That's not the truth. It's just not. And you can clearly look if you care. Most people, I think, are pretty weirded out by what's going on right now to varying degrees, obviously. But that's the joke of it all, right? Is that they always love to point at them and say they're all the same when it's just not the case either way. But keeping you locked into that false perception is what keeps their whatever you want to fill in the blank with rolling, So keeping that in mind, this was something we talked about this morning on AM Wake Up that I thought was interesting. Now, the only reason I think this is probably the least important thing we're talking about today, but it is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. Now, we talked about this morning this because it came up and Steve brought it up on the show, and because I've pointed out quite a bit the lies that have been swinging around, since the current administration, but pretty obviously over the years from Alex Jones in particular. And I'm not talking about opinions. I'm talking about provable, on the surface lies, or in other cases, just being wrong, but lies that you can prove. He knows he's lying. I've been over this many times. Different than just being wrong and not covering for it. But the point is, we've also talked about all the people over the years that have left because they're dishonest, because they lie about things. They don't check their sources. David Knight, Greg Reese, all these people, a lot of them. So what's interesting is, before I even get to Owen Schroyer, the point is that this morning we talked about this, and somebody had recently asked me, why are you concerned about Alex Jones? And I said, okay, it's a fair question, right? Because in the past, I haven't really talked about this kind of stuff. I tried to stay away from it. And I said this morning. My thought over the time was like, we can see right now that what's going on in independent media is different than it has been. Everyone, David Icke, and all the people that have been doing this a long time were all very clear about that. And I think we can all see it is the point. But they're the ones that have kind of really highlighted the mainstream alternative media phenomenon. Now, when we talk about Fox News and CNN, however long anyone's ever been doing this, what do? We look at the mainstream media. This is what they're trying to do. Here's how they're trying to manipulate you, right? So is that not the exact same thing? Jones has more followers and views in most cases than corporate media. So if we need to shift our understanding of what the mainstream propaganda machine is. I think it's people like him. I think it's shifted to the mainstream alternative media. And this is not a unique opinion, but we just don't kind of follow it to the point, which is that we should be treating them the same way. Which is why I started doing this. Calling out these ways that he's clearly deceiving, not because I'm like, this guy sucks and I hate him, which hate is a strong word for anything like this. You should let very few things rise to the level of hate in your life, but it's clear that they're dishonest and deceptive. And if you know that they're reaching millions of people, well, then it's the same as saying, look at how Fox and CNN are lying to you, right? So that's just a quick understanding of why I've even talked about this stuff. So what's interesting is as this developed, and I've been really saying, look at what's going on. Just pay attention to how deceptive it is. Go back to Bill Cooper and how he told you that Jones was a manipulative, lying person. And then once Cooper went out of the picture, Jones has always pretended like he was the one that predicted 9/11. It's just a very grifty whole thing. And then you got people like David Knight, Greg Reese, anybody, all these people that we've talked about over the years that have left, from Burmis to the True Street Media, that have said similar things about what they're doing. So today, I think it was earlier today, Owen Schroyer kind of like kind of burning the house down kind of way, left InfoWars. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the points. I just want to play one clip about it because I just think it's worth making the point. But this Owen Schroyer leaves InfoWars saying Alex Jones was not easy to work for because he was constantly pestering him about being too negative and too anti-Trump. Now, there's more than that, and you can listen to it for yourself. It's also about the fact that he clearly was controlling what he was saying, and he talks about all this, which is the same thing we've heard from just about everybody else we've talked about. So, and this just says, former InfoWars host Owen Schroyer reveals that Alex Jones has not given him a raise since 2018 and that he was living paycheck to paycheck, citing concerns of his raising cost of living. He says he no longer felt it was worth it because I, quote, can't even control my own show. That's mainstream media. Because he was constantly interrupting him, constantly telling him what to cover, constantly telling him what to guest to have on. Now, what's kind of hilarious about this is that Derek Rose just shared back to David Knight. Well, here, let me just do this. Actually, I'll come back to that since there was another point that I wanted to share here that connects to Reese. So this is what happened today. So I didn't actually know this. Apparently, that's Alex Jones' son. But so Jones posted this, where he breaks onto the set, and you can watch the full clip. They're in the middle of their show, like literally in the middle of their reporting morning show, and he just like bursts into the show and does exactly what Owen said he does and why he left. You know, I mean, part of me, to be honest, is I'm just kind of showing you what's happening. Whether this feels very contrived. Like if you watch, I'm going to play just this one for you. It feels WWF to me. Now, whether that's what Jones is doing and it's not, and Owen genuinely left, or whether the whole thing is contrived, we should be asking that. Very much so. Just like the rest of the breaking, like when Tucker leaves corporate media, you know, it's like, this is the new corporate. So consider these things, but also consider that that he left because he recognized it. Either way, question that it's all some kind of like organized thing. And you'll get what I'm saying when you listen to this. Either way, even if it is all contrived, doesn't change the reality of all these points up until now, and that this person is trying to deceive you. That just makes it more obvious. So here's what he posted. It looks like Harrison and his son are sitting there, which are clearly embarrassed by what he does. And it just makes Owen's point, to be honest.
It's like Anakin Skywalker's become our favorite.
Can we sing a song? Really?
Hey, when I go on the air, I'm letting you have it, Schroyer.
You are on the air. You're interrupting their show.
Stab your brother in this operation in the back, and you're a fucking liar.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you this cursing. He curses.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree.
I didn't realize how upset you were.
So he leaves and comes back in. You know, think about the lack of decorum. They're literally in the middle of producing a show. I just think that is so I mean, that's insulting. That shows complete disregard for what they're doing. There's no respect there at all.
Normal to go and do innuendo that you've been censored and controlled and got to go because you're talking bad about Trump and this stuff. And then later, hours later, go, oh no, he didn't censor me. All set up to boost himself off of lying about me. I don't ever get involved in infighting, but I've known somebody 10 years and they've been my friend, but he's gotten really dark, didn't talk to the crew the last 2 years. And so it's like a different person. I'm not here to be the villain for somebody's lie. So wait till you hear his phone call to me.
I mean, his son is very clearly making weird faces. Like you saw him, he put up his eyebrows. Like that says a lot, especially as the son of somebody doing this. And this is very childish. The whole thing. That's very like if it was in the middle of a show and something happened and I was forced to discuss it, maybe I would act, but you will never. That's just I can't even imagine a world in which I would break onto a set and start screaming in a tantrum way about something that happened that has nothing to do with what they were talking about. Like that is such narcissism, it blows my mind.
Yesterday, he literally talked to me like I was a crack whore and he was a pimp. He's like, yeah, well, if you're desperate, pay me more, I'll stay. But I'm going to promote my new show on InfoWars, huh?
Wow. Let's take the high road.
Really nice. I might do a week. I was like, man, this is really hurting my feelings.
Look at that. Yeah, I'd be embarrassed too.
Dude, no, it's all right. You don't have to come in. I hung up, started fucking crying, and then he goes on fucking air and lies about me. Fuck you, you fucking piece of shit. I won't fucking take people stabbing me in the back anymore. Fuck you. Get ready.
That feels very contrived, by the way. Whether Jones just kind of did that to make himself feel strong or that's some organized thing with the both of them, it does. I agree. A lot of people are pointing out that it feels very WWF, which is what this kind of thing is, what they do, these kind of platforms do. Anyway, so that's really embarrassing. And so that's what I said. You can see the embarrassment on their faces. And he posted that himself. And also here's his son, Rex, who just says, wow. This guy says, holy SHIT. He responds by saying, guy says that was something. And he goes, that was awful. Like, just so it's very clear, his son was embarrassed by that, which speaks for itself. And Greg Reese simply says, Owen Schroyer did the right thing. I think this speaks volumes. Now, the people that want to defend this person and his often weird and deceptive information will act like we're being petty. But if you understand what this is about, and you have a person like this that reaches more people than the corporate media, who is deliberately, in my opinion, deceiving people about information that's very partisan, and covering for a very clear person that I think is being infiltrated by a foreign government, is that not important? Is that not very clearly a monumentally important thing to recognize that kind of power structure? Obviously it is. And that's why we're covering this. Derek Brose says, seems worth sharing again. And this is David Knight back in his old interview discussing why he pulled away from Jones. And guess what? It's the exact same reasoning. Now, I just wanted to point out again that this is one of these ongoing things that I bet isn't going to materialize about the big updates he says are coming about Obama and Comer and, all of it, or rather Comey. And Decentral News just adds to it. Well, here's back what he said. Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, and Fauci and Hillary were all going to go to jail for sure in 2024. Look, you can say, I think that it should happen, but like I keep showing you, this is happening. My inside sources, like this clip here. I just heard, I had many talks with multiple inside people of DOJ, and they all tell me it's all coming down. Well, historically, that's not usually what happens. Whatever his things he'll tell, that you've seen the show. You've seen how consistently that doesn't turn out, but maybe it will tomorrow. I'm always open to that. But I think it's about consistency here, guys, and that's what matters. That's why you think you watch this show. Because whether I'm right or wrong, and I think the track record speaks for itself in that regard, if I'm ever actually incorrect about something or I always follow up. That's what matters. Now, talking about Epstein, which, by the way, oh yeah, what's that story again? What was Epstein? You're still talking about Epstein? Yeah, that whole story. Well, Benny Johnson posts this of Bongino. Deputy FBI Director Bongino sends a scathing message to the deep state. Which is just that framing. I always make me laugh. What to what? You mean the Democrats or is it? Does he have his their mailing address? You just send, you text it, you tag them, deep state. What do you mean? It's just a message to the deep state. It's just so dumb the way. And I'm not suggesting there's not an unelected power structure. It's just such a overly simplified way to always address this. It's what they do. But he goes, if you're a corrupt politician, we're gonna find you. Well,
let me ask you about. Are you going to be looking into, Cash and Pam, any potential collusion between the DOJ, Letitia James, the novel legal theory of Alvin Bragg or Nathan Wade or
really think about the craziness of continually focusing back, which I'm not saying there's plenty of criminal activity we can highlight. And yes, a lot of it was even done from a partisan perspective. In some cases, you could even argue against Trump. But look at what's going on in the world right now. Look at how much, almost in particular, what this administration is doing in front of you. But even then, even things that are happening on things that you wouldn't even associate with Trump, or things that are happening in foreign policy or Israel, any number of things. And you guys are continually focusing back on the election conversation you have to understand why that is.
Bonnie Willis and the DOJ. Is that something? Has anything come up? Is there any way to determine whether or not evidence was destroyed in any of these cases?
I'm almost guarantee it is. Right? If these people, left or right, have a situation where they don't, can break the law to keep themselves out of jail, I guarantee you they'll do it. That's my opinion.
Well, there's always a way to determine that. I don't want to comment on that specific case right now for a reason. I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice on that. But I want to say this. The FBI obviously has the public corruption portfolio. And yes, if you are a corrupt politician out there, if you are engaged in behavior, you know what you're doing, we're going to find you. I promise. No one is going to get off. The days of selecting and putting your partisan bias on and taking care of your friends, those days are over. You know what, Sean? I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. Well, maybe outside of you and a couple of, I don't care. I didn't come here for the money. I didn't come here to make, I know.
No, you didn't go there for the money. I can tell people that for sure. No, I didn't come here to make friends. I don't give a damn about friends. I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. I got my wife, I got you, and I got a small crew of people. So I don't need any friends. But if you're want
a
friend in D.C., get a dog.
We're coming for you.
That'll help.
Yeah, exactly. You want a friend in D.C., right? Go get a Labradoodle like I have, because there are no friends.
Yeah. Nonsense. So his point was, we're going to get you. Okay. The rest of it was all filler and nonsense about how he, who knows? Who cares about whether you're, put your life into this job and, whatever. It's all, it could be. I'm not diminishing if that is real. I'm just saying it's nothing. It comes down to what matters. And usually it's all the fluff around the sides about trying to give you the impression of what they want you to think they are and how much they care. What matters to me is outcome, action, precedent. What you do and whether you follow through, not what you say you're going to do. Either way, what about all the rest of them, right? What about all the other people you keep telling us about? What about the Epstein file conversation? What about all the people you told us that were going to go to jail? You in particular on your podcast circuit. What about Gates? What about Fauci? What about every one of them? What about all the people that supposedly manipulated the Social Security conversation? What about all the people that were the DOJ hangovers, or rather the Democrat hangovers in the FBI, or the Democrat hangovers in every field? You guys blamed some mysterious figure that did the thing we didn't like, and then nobody ever got arrested for it. But nobody's going to get away with it except everybody that already did. And I'm willing to bet you not a single example. Like, just wait till the next example and wait for the next thing to happen where it's like something like that, somebody who is guilty, or even Clinton or Obama or all the people that keep telling you are going to go to jail, and watch how it doesn't happen. I hope it does. Genuinely hope, because they're all criminals, including the other side of it. But I just don't see a world in which this makes sense. If they could have, Trump was supposed to go after in the beginning. Just decided not to because, they're good people. That's what he said publicly. But somehow we don't piece this together. So on that Epstein point overall, Thomas Massey says Johnson, well, first we'll start with Melanie's tweet here where she says the House just added a bill to the floor schedule this week that would direct the House Oversight Committee to, quote, continue its ongoing investigation into Epstein. Comes as GOP leaders are trying to stave off a discharge petition forcing the release of all the Epstein files. Massey says Johnson just scheduled this meaningless vote to provide political cover for those members who don't support our bipartisan legislation to force the release of the Epstein files. So the point is that they're maneuvering politically to try to avoid more information. Which again, like I just said when we started, this just happened today, which I think is very interestingly timed. Now, it matters what's in there. I'm sure there are people combing through it right now. I saw this right before I went live. So there's 2 links in there, which I'm always skeptical about using a link the government provides. But overall, the point is that it has all this information. There's a Google Drive in there that at least appears to me to be full of things you can click on. And so tell me what you find. I'll look into it. If it's nothing new, like every other time before this, it's just another effort to muddy the waters before more information actually comes out. But I'm not saying I know that. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of this. If you're in the chat and you've already looked, tell me if you see anything important. But here's Melanie on the back of that tweet that she put out saying, meanwhile, Speaker Johnson's also privately meeting today with some of the survivors of Epstein's abuse. Well, that's interesting. So let me get this straight. So you have created another vote to kind of stifle the effort of Massey to get this information to come out. You know that they're going to have a press conference that you've all been belittling tomorrow with these people. And so you want to meet with them the day before. And meanwhile, you dump a bunch of information out that feels like, look, it's all up in the air. So maybe they release all this information and they turn and change the whole story. If it happens tomorrow, I'll talk about it and say, good for Mike for putting it out there. I somehow don't think that's what's going to happen. And I think ultimately this is effort to kind of just muddy the waters and something, it seems very deceptive with the way they've been handling this. Didn't they just get done telling us the whole thing's a Democrat hoax? Feels very strange to me. Now, Maria Farmer in particular, somebody who said Trump explicitly was involved with all this stuff. I'll grab just the part 1. Whitney did an audio video, like a phone call with her. That's part 2. And just recorded the 2-part audio and basically just, said, she had her story to tell. It's funny how people would ever try to criticize Whitney for allowing a person like this to tell their story, which, there's no, unless you have a counter evidence to push back on, why would you ever go, that can't be true? Or push back on somebody telling their story. It just seems like a funny thing, but you take it that way. You take it as her presentation of her story. That's what it's there for. And I'll include this. The only reason I'm saying that is because it's just question everything all the time, not even trying to down. I think what she's saying is most likely accurate based on everything else we have. But overall, what was I saying? Just that she'll be one of the people that I think are going to be there, and they're all going to be speaking about what they have to say. Now, I guarantee you it's going to be something that's damaging for the Trump administration because they all seem to be pretty upset about what they've done with this recent Maxwell thing, what they've done with the entire situation. So I think there's an effort for them to sort of downplay or hide or bury what this will be. That's what I think. I'll have to wait and see tomorrow. Also, last point, Massey put this out. This was yesterday. Our press conference with 10 victims of Epstein at his 10:30 a.m. on September 3rd. He says, I pray Speaker Johnson will listen to the pleas of these victims for justice and quit trying to block a vote on our legislation to release the Epstein files. Now, that's not necessarily what they just dumped out there, you understand? So it's a kind of there's a lot of what most people actually want is whatever they have, whether it's been at one place or not, that they can collect into one organizable thing that shows the people who were involved. It's not that difficult, you understand? And they just refuse to do that. Trump, in fact, tells you it's not even true. We're not even there. So let's talk about the overlap of this conversation with warp speed. The point we made from yesterday, which is the show here. Trump's warp speed, CDC's Jim O'Neill, transhumanism, and Gaza freedom cities, actually technocratic dystopia. So before we get to the actual point of the overlap of the city point, I just want to shout out to Jen Zun here who shared this with me. This is a post to this. Vaxxus secures a $90 million in funding to commercialize needle-free vaccination delivery technology. That was August 25th of this year. Now, we're going to go through that, and I'll show you very clearly how, despite it being an Australian company, is being funded by the United States through BARDA. But before that, let's talk about the warp speed overlap, because there's a couple points that I wanted you to see before we show you yet again for the fourth example of how they're continuing the very same thing. They're just going further with it. They're not going back to the same old COVID shots. They're just making it work. They're going even further. Self-amplifying, needle mRNA patches, who God knows what else they're working on, guys. And there's a lot of it. There's all these nanotech ferritin shots and all this stuff that are still clearly happening. They're in trials and studies. They're working and they're getting funding from the United States. This is important to overlap it with, to understand this weird kind of shift from the warp speed. As Spiro says, Trump considers Operation Warp Speed a part of his legacy. And he has. He said this many times. In the clip below, he calls himself the father of the vaccine. He goes, I find it hard to believe he will walk this back and admit he's wrong and take responsibility for all of the harm in the experimental mRNA shots that they caused. There's not only one way to look at this, guys. You can't admit it was a problem without him owning that he was a part of that. But see, he's trying to walk this tightrope where he sort of goes like, it's what he does with everything. He tries to act like he's some kind of third party that's just helping out, just showing you what I see, and it's clumsy. Only people that want to support him fall for that. Now, NW Rambler points out an important point. So here he is telling us, we just went over it yesterday, that, let me grab that really quickly, because I did say it. It's right here. It's worth reading again, since this adds to the point. It's Trump's post about warp speed. Jeez, he dumps so much garbage on here. I thought it would be right here. Let's see. This is 2 days ago. I'll just do this. Should be 2 words, really, but I'm sure it'll work. There it is. Okay, so it's just this post right here. It is for sure from his account. I just don't want to have to try to search for it on the way True Social scrunches up the post. It makes it hard to see what the full picture is. Okay, so first, here's what he said, and then we'll show you why this is important. So here's what he said, and I have to really stress how this is worse than most of these other examples. Like we talked about gain of function, where they claimed, even people that I thought knew better, that they ended gain of function. But you read the actual post and it said very clearly that no, they were going to become the leaders in the versions that they thought were important. So they were going to stop the most dangerous versions, but then but still do versions of gain of function. So in no world can you claim they stopped gain of function. It's just it's a game of words. It's a game of stupidity. And then they did the same thing with more than one example, guys. It keeps happening. USAID, they didn't stop it. They just restructured it. They admit that later, and yet the narrative still goes on. It's like Trump saying we defeated ISIS. It somehow just keeps being said, even though he himself will bomb ISIS. It's just so stupid. But same point here, and I think this is worse than all of them. He says, it is very important that the drug companies justify the success of their various COVID drugs. Many people, he's clearly meaning him, that's how he plays this, think they are a miracle. Nobody but you, and some Democrats apparently, that save millions of lives. Others disagree, meaning his base. With the CDC being ripped apart over this question, I want the answer, and I want it now. Again, the answer he has already, that they know, everyone in the world knows. I have been shown information from Pfizer and others that is extraordinary, but they never seem to show those results to the public. Why not? Now, remember, we've seen their data. So what he must be referring to is something we don't see. And it says they go off to the next hunt and let everyone rip themselves apart, including Bobby Kennedy and CDC, trying to figure out the success or failure of the drug company's COVID work. They show me great, in capitals, numbers and results. I don't know how you misread that. And it says, but they don't seem to be showing them to many others. So Pfizer has some secret database that he's shown that shows that they're a super big success, or that they're great numbers, is what he's claiming. And it does say right there, showing them that they show great numbers, but they don't want to seem to be showing any others. So you're keeping secret that they have great numbers that help people. Let's realize he's been saying the entire time that they're the best success. They're saving lives. Okay, so if he adds that they're showing him great numbers, but they just don't know why he doesn't show anybody else, it takes his willful kind of dishonesty to not acknowledge what that says. And it says, I want them to show them now to CDC and the public, meaning show them the numbers that are great. Pretty easy to break down the language. And it says, and clean up this mess. Right. So if they were going to come out and show bad stuff, then that would be cleaning up the mess, right? Cleaning up the mess is to clear up that there's no problem, which is he's been telling you the entire time. One way or another, I hope Warp Speed was as brilliant as many say it was. The only one saying that is you, Trump. This is very clumsy. And then brilliant is you're quoting yourself right there, acting like you're pointing to somebody else. And it says, if not, we want to know about it and why. That is the only example you have in there where he even kind of feigns the investigatory part of it. If it wasn't brilliant, we want to know why. I can't believe people are going to try to pretend, people that I otherwise respect, that means he's going to investigate anything. It certainly could, as anything could. But if we're going to be honest about what it says, I'm just blown away by the either stupidity or willful dishonesty of people that act like this just changed everything. And frankly, again, I mean, that might insult somebody. There are people out there that I hold in high regard that were like, woohoo, I can't believe it. I'm like, I share your hopeful optimism, but I do not believe that's what's actually going to happen. I don't believe, and I know that's not what it says. So he comes out in this document and says, Pfizer has numbers that they show me that are great. And so, and the point that I didn't make just then was that he's saying, okay, Pfizer's going to show us whether or not this is the case. Right. So we're going to trust Pfizer to show us that these things work or don't. That feels right, doesn't it? Because Pfizer's honest and we know that. Ask Brooke Jackson, right? She already called this out in a way saying, what about this trial? Like, it's deceptive. So keeping that in mind, it says, I do not think, and this is from the Trump statements that he very much did say, I do think that Pfizer, I will say this, the FDA is bureaucratically run, would have taken 5 years to get it approved, would have never even had it if it weren't for me. And I learned things, he says. The FDA is virtually controlled by Pfizer. Pfizer has control, not Johnson, not Johnson & Johnson, not Moderna, but Pfizer has control of the FDA, and it's not a good thing. Okay. So Pfizer being in control of the FDA is not a good thing, but we're going to now trust them for the data that shows that these things helped. So why would it be a bad thing then if they were in control? If you're telling us, it's broken logic, guys. He's saying what he wants to say when he wants to say it to try to make you think a certain thing in the moment. Everywhere you look. I don't know why people can't see that. I mean, I think, again, it's willful ignorance. Brad Miller says, if you believe Trump was duped for 5+ years, again, despite his entire base screaming that and booing him when he says about the shots in public, come on. He goes, then you must also believe he's too stupid to be president. I just made this point yesterday. He says tens of millions of Americans were smart enough to refuse the jab. Maybe one of them should be president. It's a good point. If Trump couldn't see through the COVID op, how could he see through the next op? Right? And Steve and I were laughing about this morning. You can't play it both ways. You can't pretend he keeps tripping over every single deep state ploy and then somehow is helping fight the deep state. It just doesn't make any sense. 5 times August says, I'll celebrate Trump's pharma post today for no other reason than it reignites an important conversation. I agree with that. But he says, I'm not going to thank him for it. Conservatives tend to salivate the second that they hear what they want to hear from anyone who then quickly overdose on the hopium hit. We saw this with Zuckerberg admitted to online censorship and election interference. All of a sudden, he wasn't such a bad guy after all, and he was being thanked and praised for finally being honest about doing really bad things. Yeah, without the accountability for the things he did, right? Oops. You don't have to be nice all the time, guys. He says, we deserve the truth a long time ago. We've been lied to and abused in the process. And as we've learned, social media posts are one thing, real action and accountability are another. Well, you've learned it, August, because you're an honest person. Others are still struggling with that because they don't want to see it, right? You can see him say things that don't happen. It's pretty obvious what's going on. And it goes, we have to stop acting like peasants in these moments, right? Because, like I say, they can go, well, the Democrats wouldn't let him. Yeah, even if that's true, how many times can that happen before you just acknowledge that the system itself is broken? But see, that's what they think they're doing now, which is, breaking the system to rebuild. It's always using the problems in front of us to rationalize the next problem. It's just, look at what happened during COVID. How long did we tell you that? The problem will be the solution will be worse than the problem, until Trump came out and goes, the solution will not be worse than the problem. And then that's exactly what happened. So crazy. Now I think I'll play some of this. I was going across this in, I was looking for warp speed stuff in my files. Let's see what somebody says down here. The point is that Milk Bar TV, who's done great work around this stuff, did a compilation of all the warp speed stuff, like just all the points he made, and I'll play some of it because it's important. You have to hear the gushing, like everyone agrees and we saved everybody's lives, and you just this to argue this is somehow, I think just his hubris will stop him from telling you this is not the case, right? But I said, just came across this video in my files. Would have been perfect to play yesterday, but here it is today.
In the past 9 months, my administration has initiated the single greatest mobilization in U.S. history, pioneering, developing, and manufacturing therapies and vaccines in record time.
I guess in a certain way, I'm the father of the vaccine because I was the one that pushed it. To get it done in less than 9 months was a miracle.
No medical breakthrough of this scope and magnitude has ever been achieved this rapidly, this quickly, and we're very proud of it.
Well, Fauci said it would take 3 to 5 years. He thought it was something that just wouldn't be that effective because it would take so long to get.
Would you make sure you get the president the information that a vaccine that you make and start testing in a year is not a vaccine that's deployable? So he's asking the question, when is it going to be deployable? And that is going to be at the earliest a year to a year and a half.
I got them done in 9 months, and it was supposed to take anywhere from 5 to 12 years. If you had a different administration with different people, what we've done would have taken, in my opinion, 3, 4, 5 years, and it would have been in the FDA forever.
I pushed the FDA like they have never been pushed before.
I got the FDA to do things that it was pretty amazing what we were able to do.
I broke their ass, okay? And you know who doesn't like me too much? The FDA, because they were very bureaucratic.
This is a very bureaucratic organization. I pushed them like they've never been pushed before.
President Trump is pressuring the head of the FDA.
The president wants Pfizer's vaccine authorized today.
The president is threatening the head of the FDA that he must act now or lose his job.
You guys, just take a moment and reflect on this, right? Those are the shots that killed everybody. Okay? There's no way you pull. He is in whether you think he was played or not, he is the one that aggressively drove and then took credit for aggressively driving the forced release of the shot. Look, I don't think for a second that Fauci was, somehow the one trying to stop it. Like, clearly he is a central part of this larger problem. But what's interesting about it is that he's on record there going, we can't do it that fast. And then Trump's the one that forced it in. So you could argue that he was played to be that scapegoat. It's like a lot of people argue that to begin with, that Trump in like the larger scheme was put in this position, and maybe this will still hold true, to be like the scapegoat for why all this goes awry. Worth considering. Like, not, from like the real power structures, the actual globalist Zionist technocrat kind of machine that's not just part of the system, But I think that's good. You watch the whole thing. I think there's a lot more to it, but it goes on, and just gushing. So I'll include this again, by the way, which never, and until this becomes like the most watched video in the world around this topic, I will never think that it gets enough attention, because this is the most important conversation you're going to find around this. That scientifically, source material, the expertise of Arne Burkhardt, it's insane. And all the credit goes to Taylor Hudak. Pathologist Arne Burkhardt final interview before he died in a mysterious fashion, revealing the grave dangers of mRNA vaccines. I really just argue, if anybody out there is skeptical, thinks you're all vaccine anti-vaxxer, watch this and understand his credentials. Look at the way he breaks it down. She brings up all the different, microscopy. I always had a problem with that. Microscopy. I have the word all wrong. The lens, these shots they have through the microscope, and they bring them up on screen and they break it down. I mean, it is unparalleled in my opinion. And that's not just because it's on our platform. You guys have seen it. I really do think this is a step above most of the stuff we've seen out there, because it was one of the leading experts, if not the leading expert in this conversation, came back out of retirement to be able to make this case. And then, something else happened, but just powerful. Share this with people. Now, let's not forget, as we just talked about on August 10th, that they're leaning into the self-amplifying direction, right? That's not a secret. I mean, it is. People don't want to see it. But when they claimed they had stopped, and then the point was under the guise of ending mRNA, they clearly have continued the self-amplifying direction. That seems to only be growing, whether for dogs or many different examples of COVID shots, flu shots, all being self-amplifying mRNA. And at the moment, the least, that's even separate from the flu vaccine platform universal conversation, which again, I get the sense will somehow fold into that, but we'll have to wait and see how it goes. But keeping this in mind, and by the way, in food, we won't talk about today, which is a very clear and obvious problem that it's on the record. We'll talk about so leave it in a press conference was forced to state out loud what we'd already been covering for a week, which is that they'd already continued it started 4 new shots, claiming that they ended the shots, but she claimed it was because the emergency authorization was gone, even though it's technically not when you really look down the whole path, that 4 new shots had been started anyway. And certain people were like, breaking news, even though, no, it wasn't brand new. She was just forced to acknowledge it. And if you watched TLAV, you knew it for an entire week. But keeping that in mind, that it's not only was I right about that or anybody else telling you that they weren't, which people like Sasha Latapova, who else? I think Mary Talley Bowden, for example, was very clearly calling out the self-amplifying direction. There's a lot of them out there. Is that this was them admitting it on top of that, which just makes it important. Not the self-amplifying explicitly, but that they were continuing mRNA COVID shots. So this just takes it another step further, okay? Vaxus, $90 million for the direction of the commercialized needle-free vaccine conversation. Now, who again just told us that, Bill Gates has been adamant about this. So January 6, 2025. Apparently in this, I find this really weird, the way this, so it's the actual vaccine or whatever you want to call this is the, like the antigen part of it is VXS1219. But I found it really difficult to find that. Overall, they're just calling it the, like Vaxus, for example, using Vaxus and using the microarray, it's in here somewhere, the HD map vaccine delivery. That's what you're finding everywhere. And I kept going like, okay, what's the actual vaccine? Who's making it? And it's weird. Now, what I think the reason is this public-private overlap now. What you'll find out is these groups, including Vaxus and other groups around it, are all owned by private entities, and it seems like nobody even know, like it's not public information who the owner. How is that even possible? You find BARDA funding this stuff. I mean, anyway, there's weirdness around all of this, and I don't think it's necessarily some like this is the one secret. I think the whole industry is going this direction, where it's becoming really shadowy and hard to define, and they just give you a report and it's safe and effective, and behind the scenes, you don't really get any more information. It's sort of like the blank insert of the COVID vaccines, but just on a constant all-around scale. But you'll see what I mean in general. But so the point is that this is the shot, and it says, by Vaxus for influenza A virus, H7N9 subtype infections, likelihood of approval. VXS1219 is under development for the prevention of H7N9 virus infections. Okay. And again, the microarray patch technology. That's just the points I want you to see from this. That's what we're talking about. So January 13th, this is from Business Wire. Vaxus named stage winner of United States BARDA Prize. So it's interesting that the United States will be funding, especially now, other Australian companied vaccinology directions. Like that seems like an odd step, I think. And specifically to advance the microarray patches for vaccination. Now, the picture I have on the main thing today, I'll show it to you in a second again. It's the one we've shown you a long time ago. It's that weird kind of mini spike needle patch that then overlaps, which we'll show you. This is pretty much everywhere you look, with ways that they can then determine whether or not you were injected. The United States Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, BARDA, has announced Vaxus will receive $2 million from the U.S. in this one example for its multi-stage $50 million competition designed to, quote the article, encourage the advancement of microarray patches for the delivery of RNA-based vaccines for seasonal pandemic influenza and COVID-19. So it's the RNA, mRNA part of this that I think makes this especially problematic. So all the same problems, but with a way that is, almost can be done in ways that people don't even realize it's happening. And that's what really worries me. But overall, mRNA, COVID. Is this the play? Self-amplifying in patches. So totally not the same thing. Did they think we're that stupid? That seems to be what they're doing. Now it says the section by BARDA recognizes Vax's significant. Oh, one part was that I think part of it is funding this because, like they said, they want to encourage this direction. Anywhere in the world, that seems like an odd thing. Is it, it's always been a global dynamic. The selection of BARDA recognizes Vax's significant advancements toward commercializing its proprietary high-density microarray. So again, they seem to be the one that at least in this case, have the, they own this patent or whatever it would be in this case for the microarray patch HD map for vaccine delivery, including completion of 5 successful phase 1 clinical trials. And remember, that's what they, in the kind of Prospera Freedom City, Teal-funded sort of like bioengineered research element we talked about yesterday, where they're doing all sorts of like unregulated, weird bio experiments, and they're in Prospera and elsewhere, not a secret now, is the phase 1 would be where it ends. That's what they were just talking about. Jim O'Neill is all about that. Like, let them decide. Right. So let the vaccine companies lie to you and put it out before they actually test it properly and then let you decide. Isn't that what happened during COVID? It's just a weird thing to be doing off the heels of what they told you they were fighting. And involving more than 500 people. Woo, big one, right? No, that's the point. It's small, so you never really understand. It's what we went through last time. The 6 mice. It's like how dumb this is. Okay, down here it says Vaxis is currently conducting an IND-enabled phase 1 clinical study with BARDA for pre-pandemic influenza vaccines. Now, this keeps coming up. They keep framing this as sort of like not in the face of a problem, but things designed to sort of stave off the problem, which is what you would argue they think most vaccines are. But this feels categorized differently. I'll make that point again in a second. And it says involving 258 participants. So there's multiple ones of these going on. This one, the company has shown promising results in their initial HD map mRNA work funded by CEPI. Right, so all these points we made in the past, right, where it's like the shell game, where Trump pulls funding away from WHO but gives it to Gavi, which Gavi gives WHO, and that was the first administration, right? Similar things have gone on, which you've already talked about. One being that they're acting like we're totally not involved with CEPI, for example, except for the fact that there's many ways that you can see that the same thing happens. So here they are funding something that's CEPI. And I just showed you the AI. This one of the many, by the way. Here's CEPI right here. AI-enhanced self-amplified mRNA vaccine to combat one of the deadliest known viruses. And for all we know, this is the Geneva Biopharmaceuticals Limited, but my point is it's all the same. It's CEPI. So if we know that these are being funded through, in this case, to make it clear, the U.S. government is funding this through an Australian company. So when the Trump administration is not supporting that, they are. Exactly. It's not in the way that you would normally see. But that's not even the point. It matters, but it's the outcome, as I'm always talking about. What are they doing? They're funding mRNA injections in many different ways. That's the takeaway that should matter. So next here, this one is from January 22nd. Vaxis and CEPI advance $4.8 million program for needle-free thermostable mRNA vaccines. So these are all different dynamics, projects. So this one is showing excellent thermostability and effective delivery of mRNA using Vaxis's proprietary high-density microarray patch. Just really drilling the point home. Multiple ways they're trying to make mRNA delivering vaccine patches. By the way, when you look into these things with not really making it clear that it's mRNA. With success in several completed human clinical trials, which, by the way, even that, the idea that they're still releasing more of this stuff into the environment, into people, but shedding and all the conversations we've had. More than 500 participants. Additional ongoing phase 1 trials for other seasonal flu, COVID-19, other vaccines targeting pandemic influenza, funded by United States Biomedical Advanced Research, BARDA, HD map platform. This one is February 18th. Vaxxus completes enrollment for largest clinical trial of this patch. So this is just to show you that it is continuing, that they are going through these, that it is completed. You know, these things are, I mean, at this point, there are places I think they're already out there. Like patches is what I mean. This has been, they've talked about this, I'll show you next, since 2019, even before that. The clinical study aims to evaluate the vaccine for H7N9 for countermeasure for future pandemics. Teams, clinical collaborators, the phase 1 study conducted under the investigational new drug application authorized by the FDA. Okay, so why is the FDA authorizing an Australian company patch? I think you can piece that together. Vaxxus completes enrollment in phase 1 bird trial, which we just pointed to. This is the 20th. Patch-delivered vaccine trial received $28.5 million in funding from U.S. authorities as potential pandemic preparation. Yeah, we've heard all these buzzwords, guys. It's the same thing we were worried about under the left side of it. Pandemic preparedness, right? Here is February 28th. Skin patch delivery of specifically SARS-CoV-2 spike DNA vaccine. Same as always, multiple versions. I mean, this is the same. The point in this is just more COVID-19 injections. And this is even going back. This is like the direction of the AstraZeneca, of the, what was the other one? Johnson & Johnson, which hurt a lot of people too. I just remember we were being told by RFK and Trump and everybody else that these were not Trump, but the rest of them, and Trump kind of plays into it, that these things were going to change. They're just going in a different direction with the same problem. March 5th, newly published data supports effective delivery of DNA-based vaccines using Vaxxus's high-density microarray patch, the HD map. Recently published data generated by the University of Queensland and Vaxxus shows effective delivery of the nucleic acid-based COVID-19 vaccine. That's just the point. So it's the DNA side of it, same platform, same direction. DNA vaccine owned by a private, this is what I was talking about earlier. This is one of the other ones. A private biotechnology company called Technovalia. Look it up. Tell me if you can find any information. It seems to be this, many of these examples of in this very direction, I keep going up to a dead end. Owned by a private entity. And you're like, well, what does that mean? How? So like, when did this is where you get into the public-private overlap, guys. And this is what we've always been talking about. It says the new data builds on promising results from recent preclinical work by Vaxxus showing the effectiveness of this platform. And it mentioned CEPI as well, and delivery of mRNA-based vaccines under a program funded by CEPI. Now, look, this goes back to Derek's article from 2020, October 22nd. The head of Operation Warp Speed and the Gates Foundation are pushing bioelectric and vaccine patches. Right? If you follow this platform, guys, history shows that you'll be ahead of the story. And we've been talking. These are the same things that were there this whole time. And the interesting overlap is that these do dovetail wearables and patches in obvious fashion. So before we get to that, this is one of the things that this is on the surface of this conversation. Quantum dots encode vaccine history in the skin. Invisible to the eye, the dots glow under infrared light from modified smartphones. That's the image I used for the show today. That's like a scientific image from, I believe it was Science Direct, I think. It was a science platform. I forget which one it was. But the point is that you can use different technology to be able to see the bioluminescence, maybe luciferase, things like that will show up and see. Right? When there's a whole interesting conversation around that relates back to biblical conversations. And, there's a lot going on around this that I think is very interesting. Oh, here, it already went away. Now it says, now a team of MIT's bioengineers have developed a new way to keep invisible vaccine records under the skin. Delivered, and this is 2019, delivered through a microneedle patch, biocompatible quantum dots. And now there is an overlap with that and the graphene conversation, but it's not always that case. And it says they embed in the skin and fluorescence under near infrared light, creating a glowing trace that can be detected at least 5 years after vaccination. The work is described today in the journal Science Translational Medicine. I think that's what it was. Now, quantum dots are small, semiconducting nanoparticles. Of course, because we haven't been warning about that for a long time, quantum dots are being explored for medical use as biological sensors and probes. And as usual with these conversations, starts as just, we'll be able to look and see the light and we'll know for sure. And then leaving out the other 90% of what they do inside your body. Like that's kind of where these things tend to go. The dots were then loaded into a microneedle patch, a square with an array of tiny needles that deliver nanoparticles into the skin. It sounds lovely. In the current paper, the scientists applied the patch to the skin of rats and were able to detect the dots using smartphone modified with a filter to detect near-infrared light. It says they're also planning a study expected to begin in early 2020. Interesting timing, to survey populations in Kenya, Bangladesh, Malawi about the acceptability of the technology, such as how and where it will be most useful and if parents will be on board. I bet you they did a lot of experiments like that in 2020. It says the work is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So, obviously now with Donald Trump's administration supporting this, which is what it is, and Biden too, and all the rest before it, just recognize that they're doing the same thing, just like I've been showing you the entire time. Nicholas Holscher, the epidemiologist and administrator at the McCullough Foundation, points this out. And this is from June 27th. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has funded wearables, which you all know, skin implants, microneedle patches that deliver permanent quantum dots to verify vaccination. Now, can be permanent. The point is the authors of the Gates-funded study note that the quantum dot marking should persist for at least 5 years. Quantum dots, the S10C5H QDs encapsulated in polymethyl methylacrylate microspheres, excuse me, can be detected with adapted smartphones, as we pointed out. Quantum dot implants would be used as biological vaccine passports, where their detection in human skin would be required to enter grocery stores, restaurants, gyms. And this is not a secret. Like, that is the overlapping point that has been made. Like, he actually cites a study and conversation in this very point. Like, this is what they're talking about. That's the old image we showed you a long time ago. So I agree. And he goes over a few other images that I didn't share that you'll find in here. This is what they float as the future. And realize, very importantly, that the smart city, Prospera, Freedom City overlap, which is all the same conversation, are very public and clear about what they want. Look at the Gaza one. Digital IDs, mass AI surveillance, AI smart cities, digital money, all of it. And that is how this works, is different kinds of dynamics like this that allow them to be able to track you without needing to act. It's next level stuff. And you see how it comes together. They need the AI to, they need the digital ID to make sure you're accessible to it. They need the digital money to be able to surveil and control what you can use it on. Like, it all comes together. And here's RFK on June 24th, again, saying my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years. Just got to start being honest about the direction this is going in, guys. Now, again, here's Bill Gates. This is an older clip of him saying the patches are coming your way.
We'll have new vaccines. We'll have
Oh, and don't forget, Donald Trump met with him twice now. And Gates has been very excited about what they had a conversation about. And since then, they've continued to go in the direction of mRNA, self-amplifying, and other kinds of shots. So you could piece that together.
TB vaccine, malaria vaccine, HIV vaccine, and even the things like COVID vaccines, we need to make them have longer duration, more coverage, and we're going to change, instead of using a needle, to use a little patch. So the pandemic really highlighted that we've been underinvested in those innovations, and our partners in India are part of how we're going to get these breakthrough products done.
Okay, so again, when you talk about how Gates said, by this time vaccines will be rolling out. Okay, yeah, and rightly you should ask whether or not he knew something, whether or not he was telling it wasn't just a guess. It was that, okay, so same point. Did he know this? So you can either decide that he just guessed, and that, in other contexts, those kind of people would have never gone. They'd always make it, the point is, assume in this conversation what you want to hear of it, but deny it here. And what's the difference? That Trump's involved. That's it. Either he knew this was coming, or he is the one that drove Trump to do it, are the most logical. There's probably plenty more possibilities, but it has to matter. And you know as well as I that people are choosing to ignore most of these things. Now let's overlap this conversation with Israel, for just not because you necessarily have to, but because this is what we're going to get into next. But I think it's interesting to talk about this in regard to Microsoft. Just, in regard to Bill Gates. I just think it's interesting that Microsoft keeps kind of playing, showing its face in this conversation. And this is interesting, as Hegseth just announced, they're going to internally audit the Bill Gates founded company, Microsoft. How interesting. They suddenly see Israel, right? Oh, wait, never mind. They're doing it to find out if Chinese nationals are using it. Which, yeah, matters, of course. But funny how Microsoft, as we keep showing you, is like on the record completely immersed with Israel and their intelligence apparatus. Here's WikiLeaks. The Israeli army is using Amazon's cloud service to store surveillance information on Gaza's population while procuring further AI tools from Google and Microsoft for military purposes. That's actually the wrong one, but that is that's one of them. But it was the that wasn't it either. Azure. There it is. Leaks reveal Microsoft helped Israel deploy Azure Cloud for mass surveillance and airstrike planning, which then obviously then does connect with this one about them using this. It's very clear. WikiLeaks and others have called this out. Leaked documents reveal Microsoft's Azure Cloud was used by Israel's Unit 8200 for mass surveillance of Palestinians. Now, it's not just they're using their programs. You can see that they're hiring people directly from intelligence in Israel. You can see that people are former Unit 8200. That it's very public. So I just think it's worth remembering, especially as it is something that's connected with a lot of other conversations. This was just the DARPA selects Microsoft to continue the development of their utility scale quantum computer. 2024, hooray! More aggressive overlap with Israel's intelligence apparatus with all of our weird super next generation tech. Makes you feel good? Include these for you. So here he is going, we're going to investigate Microsoft to make sure that Chinese nationals aren't using it to hack into DoD systems. Which, by the way, the reason people are hacking into these systems is because they allow Israeli intelligence to have backdoors. And see, it's in one part. I mean, clearly there are other aspects that I can talk about which show you that they're just being fast and loose with even caring about this kind of security, whether Israel or otherwise. But I mean, we talked about the telemessage discussion, how embarrassing this is that they're using an Israeli intelligence, what's the word I'm looking for? Not categorizes, but it basically, so it's you use Signal and it's called, I'll grab that again really quickly because that is an important one for you guys to actually check out. State Department revealed to be using Israeli intelligence linked chat app involved in Trump admin hack. Right. So they were using telemessage in the inner circle of the White House, which God, I can't remember the word. Archives. It archives everything you're using on the app and then relays that back to the telemessage. It's all the record. I did a whole thing on the show. Telemessage is on the surface an Israeli intelligence entity, and they're using this in the White House. And it wasn't just him, guys. It's just wild to me how obvious it is that there's a major problem that people are finally starting to call out here. But so keeping that in mind, the DOD, and he's going to look into it for Chinese stuff. Here's what Solari Report says. And where is the missing 20 trillion that they're never going to actually talk about? I was told it started at the same time Microsoft loaded up the special 95 Windows for the government. Ooh. Oh, okay. See, it may go back a lot further than you think. Include this for you. Oh, I did. So on top of that, here is Chris Menahan talking about Wikipedia. And these are just individual points. I mean, we've gone over so many of the examples. What this shows you is AIPAC, a pair of AIPAC-funded Republicans working on behalf of the ADL, sent an intimidating letter to the Wikipedia Foundation. We showed it to you the other day. It was from the government of the United States, threatening them to manipulate information for Israel. What's interesting is just before that, the ADL had gone on a tirade telling them that they need to censor Wikipedia. I just think it's insane that they just jumped up and said, okay, the people like Randy Fine, Leo, what's his name? Or Leo, whatever, the black guy, I forget his name now. They're all like aggressively doing, Israel points to something and they jump up and go after it. So I just think it's insulting to not see how obvious that is. It says these requests, which Wikipedia have only 2 weeks to comply with, line up perfectly with the ADL's agenda and amount to nothing more than an intimidation tactic to pressure Wikipedia to change their editorial guidelines, which, by the way, is already wildly manipulated by groups like them. It just shows you how they're losing control, and they're even losing control of the people that they've usually been able to manipulate. But the overarching point for this is that Israel is infiltrating the U.S. government in obvious ways. So here's DG Geopolitics showing you that after that all happened, Wikipedia's Gaza war entry has now suddenly listed the Islamic State Palestine district as a Hamas ally. Guys, it's just so stupidly, it's a lie, as they rightly point out. They are ideologically different. I mean, they are enemies. You can easily prove this. Robert's broken this down. So it's just insulting. But what they're trying to do is just make it lazily about terrorism. It's ISIS. You know, or aside from the obvious reality that ISIS and Al-Qaeda are very clearly proxy elements of the U.S. and Israel, like we're watching in Syria, by the way. But go ahead and pretend that this group that they, you know, I don't even need to give it lip service, guys. It's just so lazy. But it shows you how easy it is if Israel just asks, the U.S. demands. Another example, you might have seen this. We pointed to it. This video is probably down here somewhere. I was looking at it earlier. This is a video of a girl, a woman in college, who a guy with an IDF shirt said something to her. And, you know, if there's any what we've seen of so far, they're very provocative, very like intentionally trying to meet. But either way, it doesn't matter. For the point is that she reacted and started yelling at him and, you know, like smacked his phone away, like very, very minimal. And Bondi and everybody else went to town to get her removed. Brandy Fine just shared it going, yeah, you're expelled. Get out of here. We don't want terrorists in our country. Terrorists? I mean, it's wild. Her name is Eden Deckerhoff. She's been expelled from Florida State University, and she's also being sued. You see how crazy this is? And this is not, they know that they've lost control of what most people think about it. But what they recognize is they still have the control over people in power. So they're exerting that. Blakely says, is this a joke? She's expelled, sued, and the literal DOJ under Pam Bondi made a federal case out of the woman flipping off a man wearing a terrorist IDF shirt. But an Israeli pedophile who works in the government of Israel was caught in a sting operation and able to leave the United States without consequence. You got that right, Kash Patel? Guys, I mean, this should be outrageous, in particular to people on their side. But nope, you won't hear either side call it out, and you know why. That's so depressing that so you have an American student who acted like, look, if you want to charge her for some kind of what would you like? I mean, it wouldn't even be assault. Like, you watch the video for yourself. It's like the flag brushing that person's eye. Fine, charge them for harassment, whatever. In no way would that go to expelling. In no way would that even be a legal issue. But they're taking that all the way to the point to where she's being expelled, sued, and how much you want to bet they try to make this an example of some kind of deportation or some kind of, something like that. If there was going to be one, it would be something like this. It's just insulting, and you know it. It's not what this is somebody fighting for something other than American interests. Now, we already know that Palantir is very much overlapped with Israel. That's very obvious. And this is just my clumsy way to fold this into the next part. It's very important to see that Palantir is a strategic partner of somebody committing genocide in multiple places right now. So keeping that in mind, Jason Bassler points out the CIA bankrolled Palantir as a private front to bypass the Constitution and circumvent privacy protections. Palantir didn't just build a tool, it built a legal loophole. It's a very good way to think about that. Now, there's a lot of other ways. It's a big situation. That doesn't, you might even say in some ways it's oversimplified, but he's doing it for a reason, right? He's doing this to make a very clear focal point that they, in one major way, if not the entire point, they created a situation which allowed them to do the thing which we've always all agreed was wrong, but they did it because narrative, right? And because situation, it's what they're doing. And he's right. So thinking about what we just went over with the Israel infiltration or just anybody, they're acting in ways that violate the most foundational aspects of what we believe this country is. And this is being built around you in rapid speed right now. So we talked about the U.S.'s new Israeli-made AI pre-crime system. I actually can't believe how little attention that got from, in particular, freedom-focused Republicans. This is an Israeli entity. Gideon, we talked about it. Watch this show. It's horrifying. This guy rushed out the moment that shooting happened off the back of Melania's post and said, we talked to 12 different agencies. And we've got thousands of people in place. So obviously it was already going on. There's no way around that. And it's the same old pre-crime element that Whitney's been warning about forever, that Bill Barr began in Trump's last administration, and they just continue to this point. Now it's AI pre-crime. Like, it's the same real point, but it's just to another next level. And he tells you it's made in Israel. And he even tells you that it aligns with Israel's kind of like, what was the word we talked about today on AM Wake Up? I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Ontology, or onto I can't remember now. Anyway, the point was that it's about, like almost like esoteric, like saying it's like in line with like Israel's worldview as an AI pre-crime tool. Very alarming. But the overarching point here, guys, is that this is counter to to what we believe this country is. all built on the idea that we have to fight this because one crazy person shot some people, ignoring for a moment how often those things are cultivated, how often they lie about it, how often they use whatever's in front of them. It just blows my mind. As always, there's not an excuse where suddenly the answer is violate inalienable rights. Doesn't happen. I don't care what you think. I don't care how serious it gets. There's not an answer which is do the wrong thing. But that's what they've driven a lot of people to convince themselves that the thing that you are dying for will break right now, but because we have a reason for it. Really? I don't believe everyone's falling for it, though, because that is a hard sell. But keeping that in mind and the overlapping with what's going on in the country, Trump rolls out Obama's martial law plan. Now, I made a joke about that, but it's not really a joke, because the point is that somebody was making a whole effort to argue that the statements of what Obama were going to do were all conspiracy theory, but Trump's actually doing them now. I simply made the point that you could prove that Obama's actions were not conspiracy theory. They just didn't really execute it to its full extent. And Trump is now the one doing it. So acknowledge, like every other example, that they are the same thing, and he's rolling it out in a different way. And of course, we talked about the Larry Fink inner circle, that he's literally in the inner circle of Donald Trump, and he was the last time too, and somehow that's not a problem. And in every moment they can, the Republicans are calling out BlackRock when it bumps up against a Democrat, but weirdly doesn't care about this. Silly. Now, just a thought says, if everyone would stop focusing on distractions, like Trump dying and started focusing on the militarization of our country paired with Israeli-backed surveillance and technocratic influence within the administration, maybe we'd have a chance. I agree. And here's Donald Trump saying we're going to roll out more martial law, but this time in Chicago.
Chicago, though? Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, and especially over the last few days, I guess, there was a spike, which happens in Chicago all the time. I'm not saying that's okay. It's something that's been there and been a problem. But what you're going to hear is him trying to create this as, yet again, like he just did with DC, that it is now the most dangerous place in the world. Provably false, by the way. But he's just speaking off the cuff. No, it's called a lie, okay? Because he says it repeatedly and he keeps saying it and forces it in. It's not the most dangerous place in the world. And in fact, it's not even the most dangerous city in the country. But yes, it's very dangerous. And yes, I will equally with you criticize the politicians that have allowed it to happen, whether they're left or right, because there are other places in the country that are right-leaning that are somewhat as bad. But I'll happily admit that Chicago in particular is one of the worst. But again, per capita, not the most dangerous place in this country. Just because you don't like that because it challenges what he's trying to sell you on doesn't make it not true. So it frustrates me that how easy it is to play people that want to believe in a person.
And 75 are shot with bullets.
As opposed to knives, being shot with knives.
So let me tell you a little story about a place called D.C., District of Columbia, right here where we are. It's now a safe zone. We have no crime. We have
incorrect. And we'll prove it to you next.
It's in such great shape. You can go and actually walk with your children, your wife, your husband.
Which they could do before. Right? I mean, yeah, certain parts dangerous at night. Yeah. But if you care to actually be an honest person about this, plenty of people who live in Washington, D.C. would tell you that there's people go out during the day and go to parks. And yeah, that's real, guys. Yes, and there are bad areas. There are good areas. It's like anywhere else. But they will play you by using what you want to see and hear and using caricature, It's like gerrymandering of political news, right? They'll just kind of carve out a certain thing and be like, that's the thing right there. Meanwhile, you're missing the other 90% of the conversation. And if you saw that, it changes the entire view. But it's left and right. It's what politics is. It's what they do.
You can walk right down the middle of the street. You're not going to be shot, Peter. You're safe.
He's just kills me. Rob, you were there. But the point is that they're going after Chicago. At least that's what they're projecting now. Of course, Benny Johnson, cheering on the martial statement, the unconstitutional reality of the country, woohoo, says it's time to deploy the National Guard. Trump says Chicago is the murder capital of the world. Nope, that's just not true, right? Whether dangerous, which you said before, and most dangerous, it's not true. Now, look, guys, it's a crazy thing to say. There are a lot more dangerous places in the world. There's more dangerous per capita places in the country. I'll show you right now with Grok, with Newsweek. Not that you should blindly trust those two, but do your own research. But I think it's always interesting to show the platform that they all think is on their side challenging what they have to say. But overall, it's, if you can acknowledge that it's not the murder capital of the world, then you have to acknowledge that that's playing it fast and loose with the truth, if not just simply lying to you. And then ask yourself why that has to be the case. Could he just tell you that it's a dangerous place, we want to help? Why do you always have to push the envelope? Because it's, I mean, you can answer that question. It's kind of easy to recognize. So here's what Grok had to say. No, Chicago is not the murder capital of the world. While it has a high number of homicides due to its large population, its murder rate per capita is lower than many other cities globally and within the United States. Now, yes, per capita matters, right? Because if you have a massive population, you're going to have pretty much more of everything, right? And so the idea is that it could also be used to manipulate, guys. That's also true. That's why you have to show discernment and not blindly take one side or the other, but look for yourself like we're doing and recognize that it's just general based on the numbers. It is not the murder capital of the world, even the United States. It says, for example, in 2024, Chicago had 573 murders with a murder rate of about 21.5 per 100,000 people, which is how they tend to break these things down. Globally, cities like Tijuana, Mexico, 138 homicides per 100,000. Okay, so first and foremost, clearly not the murder capital of the world in any stretch of the imagination. Well, Ryan, he was just trying to accentuate the point. No, it's called a lie, but okay, we'll put that aside. And he says, in the United States, it says, Grok says, cities like St. Louis, 54.1 murders per 100,000 in 2024. New Orleans, 74.3 murders per 100,000 in 2022, consistently have higher per capita murders than Chicago. Okay. So yes, so then they're just it's the same way they use the COVID numbers in a certain slant to make you think it was a certain way. That's what politicians do, guys. It says claims like murder capital of the world from Trump exaggerate the issue, as Chicago's rate is lower than many U.S. international cities. Pretty simple. Here is, before we go past that, this is on D.C. as well. The reality of this is pretty clear to me. I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't care about the crime. If it's the same as it's the same as like when we're criticizing Neuralink and saying there's a whole big agenda around that, and you go, what, you don't want people to walk again? Like, let's start playing this tired game, okay? Obviously, we're not talking about that. That is even if that does happen, it doesn't change the concerns we have for what else is going on. So in the idea of Chicago, Washington, D.C., clearly, at least I'll speak for myself, in no way are we saying we shouldn't care about the crime. That's just a lazy response, because that's obviously not the case. It's that we care about what they're using the situation for, using the situation to execute. As we always used to ask, right, Republicans? We always used to say that, or everybody should have been going like, question everything, right? Maybe they're problem, reaction, solution, but not when it's Trump's side. So now they're arguing they're going to roll out to another place. Now, beyond DC, which I've been waiting for the next deployment, it creates a much more difficult effort, because DC and the different statehood situation I think that's why they started there, hoping this precedent would carry over. But there's an entirely different legal challenge that begins when they go, even in regard to the National Guard and crossing state lines and who's in charge. I mean, it is important to see that, they're violating posse comitatus right now. There is no act of Congress. There's no national emergency, despite the statement of such. It's just not the reality. There is not some crime national emergency, because that doesn't back it up. It goes to court. The numbers are not worse. If it was a national emergency for crime, then you would have started in the worst place. Not what happened. Neither is DC, and I'll show you the breakdown again in a second. So this is, in my opinion, using a problem like we keep talking about that we actually want solved. The government, not the left and right lie, but the government creating a problem, then using that need for that problem to be solved to roll in something new, to do any number of things, to normalize this with martial law in the streets, to drive us into a position where we accept the biometric digital scans and surveillance to justify whatever the new problem is tomorrow. It's just, or some, breakdown of this country, to put it simply. I mean, there's a whole way to go into, and I've talked about it a lot, but I see this destabilization happening right now, and it's pitting Americans against Americans. It's hard not to see that, but that's coming from my personal perspective on it. But overlapping this with DC, it's the same point as Trump tells you. Remember, didn't Trump just tell you that DC was the worst place in the world? Well, now it's Chicago. But of course, because Trump saved DC, and that's why it's nice now, right? Well, that's also not true. Trump says, and it's not because this article says so. You can look into the data for yourself. The reality is that in the last week, there was a murder. But yeah, that's down for sure. But of course, having military march to the streets kind of makes it obvious to see why the murderers and thieves aren't going around. Oh, except guess what? There was a whole bunch of robberies and a whole bunch of reports of problems that they're not telling you about. So even if you want to say it's safer, which it probably is by default because military is marching through the streets, which nobody in DC probably wants, the obvious point is that if there's still a bunch of robberies and chaos, then why would they say there's nothing? It's the same as saying the most dangerous place in the world, which is a lie. It's not just a casual exaggeration. To say that there's no crime is a lie. Those things matter. It means they're just trying to deceive you. Trump says DC is now crime-free. That was his quote. It had 400 reported incidents in the last week. In a spree of Truth Social posts on Labor Day, President Trump declared Washington, D.C. a crime-free zone following his National Guard takeover of the Capitol. Now, you know as well as I, regardless of what would have happened, that was what they were going to claim, because that's what politicians do. You're not going to go out and go, whoops, we failed. My mistake. That never happens, right? Point out an example of when that's ever happened. When they come out and go, I made a mistake. I was incorrect. It's a unicorn in politics. These include 50 reports. Oh, excuse me. It says, however, available crime statistics from DC Metropolitan Police Department, which is what they're immersed with right now, right? They're in there, shows 442 crimes reported in the district over the past 7 days. It's not a huge thing. My point is to show you that it is, even with a military presence, there's still crime, and it's not crime-free. These include 50 reports of violent crime, 1 homicide, and I'll point out why that's important. We'll get to it. 23 instances of assault with a dangerous weapon, 24 robberies, and 2 cases of sex abuse. Nearly 250 thefts were also reported over the past week. Trump began his so-called crime crackdown in D.C. on August 11th. As part of the effort, his administration took over the city's police department and sent National Guard troops, FBI, ICE, and agents into the streets. So they took over the police department. So when you're taking the police department's information, so if you're going to claim they're lying about the data, well, then you're pointing to the Trump administration lying about okay, you get it. Although hundreds of crimes are still being reported, as recently as January, the Department of Justice was touting the fact that the violent crime in Washington, quote, is the lowest it has been in over 30 years. In January of 2025. That's the Trump administration. Trump, however, has said he plans to follow suit with the federal takeover of law enforcement in other major cities, including Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Baltimore, and Oakland. Okay, well, let's look at those places. Trump was seen departing the White House to play golf on Saturday morning and on Sunday night, and posted, "Never felt better in my life." I think it's funny because I think he's dying, and I didn't even look into it. I mean, you question these things. You should always feel it's okay to question anything. My point is that going from he's dead to never felt better in his life, it's probably somewhere in the middle. Just to make the point, they lie about everything because that's what they do. But the places they're talking about, right? So here are the top 30 based on crime rates entirely and per capita. It's the only real way to do it objectively. Listed right there. Chicago is number 16. Baltimore is number 26. DC doesn't even make the list. But so funny, I mean, Memphis, Tennessee was mentioned, but that doesn't seem to be, that's number 1. Cleveland, Ohio, Toledo, these are 1, 2, and 3. Why aren't we starting there? Now, some of these, I think Arkansas, I forget which ones. I think 3 or 4 of them were Republican locations. And then and I think a good portion of them were Republican states, which doesn't change the fact that it's a Democrat city. But it matters though. Because this is just not they're deceiving you about what's really going on. So he's going to roll it out to places that are not the most dangerous while stating that it's the most dangerous place in the world, because that's what he needs to sell you on. Seems pretty simple. Now, this is from Grok. How many murders in DC over the last week? I was curious if they, with the comparison to what Newsweek said. Based on available data, DC recorded 1 homicide in the last week from August 26th to September 1st. So even while the military is marching through the streets, somebody got murdered. Now, I said, what was the average murder per week before Trump's actions? Turns out that was 3 per week, 0.19. Okay, so, I mean, let's be real about this. Now, if you're going to make it statistical, that's 66%, which does seem like that's a large number. But we're talking about going from 3 murders a week to 1. Now, looking at it in an objective sense, I don't think that's as big as a change as you may want to think. And I, again, think that it is only a change. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that there was still a murder and there was still crime we'll go into next. That all you're really seeing is this kind of weird limbo where people are watching military march through the streets. And so people are doing less things. That's not changing people's actions. Those criminals will go back to what they're doing the moment the military's gone, which, as I said, I can almost guarantee will be the justification for leaving a presence, even if it's just like a hangover National Guard presence, which becomes permanent, which is kind of what seems to be happening. I don't know why Republicans think this makes sense. But I said, how many robberies have taken place over the last week? According to available data, it says specifically 7 robberies were reported within the period of the last 12, of a period of less than 12 hours from mid-afternoon Friday 29th. And additional reports indicate that at least 2 more robberies occurred during this week. And it says that another on August 30th. This brings the total to 9 robberies for the week. You know, it's kind of pretty close to what Newsweek was saying. So to me, I think it just speaks to the idea that there is still crime taking place, and I just made the point. I think it's a pause, and the moment this shifts, it's going to go back. It's not really about the crime, guys. If they cared about the crime, the entire thing would be done differently, and ultimately it wouldn't be focused on one side of the paradigm, and they would have done this a long time ago. This is the executing the agenda. Now here is Piro making, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that makes me embarrassed for the people that would fall for such a ridiculously flimsy argument. This is her normalizing the idea of military in the streets because somehow, you know, it's always just stupid Democrats. Next thing you know, they're going to say police shouldn't be there. Well, yeah, you know, somebody like you who claims to be educated about the law should very much know that those are shockingly different things. But she's just trying to convince you that this is okay because she has a political side. Here's what she says.
This is effective, and the people of D.C. know it. And this nonsense about National Guard on the street, next thing they're going to say police shouldn't be on the street. No surprise, because the 3 dumbest words ever said by Democrats were defund the police.
Right. Which is, you know, this is the only thing they can do, left or right. They go, the other side's dumb. The other side's racist. Right. And somehow that works for the dumbest people in the room. All right. So in this case, Democrats are bad. They tried to defund the police. Therefore, it's okay that you have martial law, which is not what she's saying. But military in the streets is not even close to the same thing as police in the streets. And she knows that. So she's being very dishonest about this. And also because it's effective. Is it constitutional? Who cares? It's working, right? These are authoritarians pretending, masquerading as patriots and constitutionalists, which pretty much goes for most of the mainstream alternative media, it seems right now. Aaron Melnick says, our founding fathers made damn sure to separate the military from the civilian. We should remember why they did this and not rush to toss their wisdom aside. Very wise take on that in the face of such stupidity and dishonesty. Homeland Security, just doing the same thing. This is literally the DHS account. Judd posts this going, troops hanging out in D.C. Metro today, displaying assault rifles, doing absolutely nothing. Oh, yeah, so we're past the whole just National Guard with their sidearms. Oh, no, we got full-on military with assault rifles. Now, funny how rapidly, they're not even talking about it. This is martial law. There's no way around it. Anybody honest, including conservatives, have been calling this out. Can you imagine if Obama was doing any of this? DHS comes in and goes, quote, why do we need firefighters? Nothing's on fire. Oh, okay, well, quick, great logic. I mean, let's deploy the military in case something bad goes wrong, right? It's the whole see something, say something, right? Safety check at your home. Let's make sure the police are knocking on your doors every night to make sure you're okay. Right? Do you want that? I mean, this is alarming. And anybody that falls for the idea that it's okay, they should be there just in case, you've lost the plot, guys. You have lost connection with what you think you're fighting for, or you never were fighting for the Constitution. This continues. Trump administration, as of today, approves 600 military lawyers as immigration judges. And as you might not be surprised, the fake patriots are all cheering out there. Now, you may not understand why I say that, because it doesn't seem as concerning, it is though, as saying military soldiers on the streets. But it's the same thing in principle. In law, it's the same thing. Okay, this is talking about the idea that they're taking military lawyers and through executive action, creating a situation where you can place them as immigration lawyers because they claim they need to rapidly push through the process. Well, no, it was never an issue of going faster. It was an issue of doing it right. And they never have been. They're trying to skip due process. And so the problem is, regardless of whether this may execute even the right process, this is military in civilian capacity. And in particular with law enforcement, this is a crime. It's a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. It's not a secret. And I plan on talking about this on the next Fine Points because I'm sure Bruce will have some takes on it. I think it's very obvious this is a problem, and you won't be surprised to find that Nick Sorter's the types going, let's go, freedom, even though it's the exact opposite. He goes, up to 600 military lawyers have been authorized, right, whatever that word means to them, Trump signed a piece of paper, as immigration judges, an effort to speed up mass deportations per the Pentagon. Well, yeah, it's also a crime, though, right? And we can go into this, and I may go through it in more depth. The simple reality is, and I have the here's actually just Grotkinson's doing the same point with conservatives and what their platform's saying. But you can go through the actual act itself. Here's what it says even here. The constitutionality of authorizing military lawyers to serve as immigration judges is highly questionable. It likely violates the Posse Comitatus Act. Now, why does it say likely? It says, unless explicitly authorized by Congress, it's the same point. Or an extraordinary statutory exception, e.g., Insurrection Act. So you see where we are? And now you see why they need to make these stories up, because Congress sure as hell is not allowing this. So they need to claim there's an insurrection. They need to declare an emergency. And so explain to me how you're going to, this is what I said at the beginning of the DC point. Okay, so they're floating it to go to other cities. Are you now telling me you're going to declare an independent emergency on each place every time you want to tell us it's the worst place in the world? Or are you going to declare a nationwide emergency because just crime? Either way, we should be outraged. And it will become something like this. It'll become some idea that it was the Democrats are doing it on purpose to overthrow the government and they'll go insurrection. Or they won't care because the Congress does not seem to do anything right now, especially when they should be, whether left or right, when somebody should be impeached for ignoring Supreme Court rulings or breaking the law. And that goes back to anyone you want to look at. They don't do it anymore. There's no response. There's no action from Congress. And so that means the executive branch is the dictator. It's where we are. So, but the point is, and it goes through a bunch in here, but just look up the Posse Comitatus Act and realize that the idea it's very clear. And the only nuance right now with like the National Guard is you can deploy National Guard in the state and it can be run by the governor. But crossing state lines, run by executive branch, all of which is happening are violations of the act. They only claim there's getting around it by saying there's an emergency. So the reality is any military, whether it's lawyer, anybody in the military being used in this way, unless those two things is a crime. So did they declare did they use the Insurrection Act? Not that I can see. Did Congress make it okay? Not that I can see. But you'll get the fake patriots like Nick Sorter out there yelling to the high, we're winning because Democrats are bad. This is an article from, I think, Mother Jones. Experts question the legality of deploying National Guard officers as immigration judges. This is back from July. See, so they were already trying to do this with National Guard. It's the same difference, guys. It's military, right? And National Guard is either from the Air Force or from the Navy, or no, the Army or the Air Force. And both are deployed so far. You need to recognize that this is any way they can get it done. It says using military courts to hear civilian cases is the essential component of martial law. It is. So if you're using that exact case, I mean, come on, you already know where this goes. It's sad we can't be honest. Now, all of this I think it's important to always think about the big picture. This is a show we did in August 2024. Weaponized migration and experimentation. Tools for subversion, division, and manufacturing consent. And one of the major parts is how transparently obvious it is in many cases because they admit it publicly that Israeli government entities are manufacturing weaponized migration. It's really not that hard to see. And of course, when you recognize that they tell you themselves that that's how they bring on the end times, it's not hard to see that these religious Zionists that are all through Trump's cabinet and all through Israel are to argue that America first when they think the country should collapse is kind of hard to sell. But understanding that the whole thing, the push, which we might go into more in the next show, I put off some of the stuff I was going to get into today, of them pushing this kind of worldwide, global, remove the immigrants. It is coming from one place. And here's Insurrection Barbie citing what Cenk Uygur said, which is, he quoted what Netanyahu said, but which is very clearly what he did say, which is you can't be MAGA if you're anti-Israel. Netanyahu said that. So apparently now Netanyahu is setting the tone for the MAGA movement. Well, Insurrection Barbie came out and said he's right. Israel is only the democracy in the Middle East and blah, 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 blah. Well, for which is why you can't be MAGA unless you are on Israel's side. This, as I simply said, fake MAGA exposing itself all over Twitter today. This is on the 30th. It's very easy to see. Most, I think, people in the MAGA side right now are very clearly seeing that problem. And people like them are drowning because nobody, I mean, it's very clear. I mean, look at the engagement. Oh, excuse me, even this. For what they're used to. I mean, look. You realize how many followers they have, right? 1 million followers, guys. Look at that. People see it. Now, talking about Israel. This is a disgusting conversation, but I think it's important to see because people like Insurrection Barbie and all the rest of them that are blindly supporting Israel at the expense of American interests will run from this kind of conversation and will never discuss things like what we talked about. This guy, Tom Alexandrovich. Everyone's talked about it. I think even the ones like Alex Jones that tried to hide from it and Laura Loomer were forced to engage with it because nobody let it go. Good for you. The U.S. government, and in particular, Trump's administration and 2 Zionists within it, literally born in Israel Zionists that are currently in our government, let him go. Not a secret. Everyone's covered this. No charge. Nobody didn't pick his passport. Just let him go back, and he's walking free after he was attempting to rape a child in this country. So let's talk about this bigger point, and we'll overlap with that. So Red Pill Media put this out. A Jewish Israeli settler has been caught raping a 14-year-old Palestinian boy in the West Bank. Now, this is not a brand new story, but it is somewhat new. Even this, I wasn't familiar with this. Ask Perplexity just asked about it. Here's what they said. The information presented in these images and tweets refers to a real criminal case from July 2024 in Israel, which I have the sites for, where a 19-year-old named Yithazik Frankel from specifically Modin Ilit, a very, very super Orthodox place, was arrested and charged with the rape and severe assault of a 14-year-old boy in a settlement near Ramallah. Israeli police and media confirmed the details widely, including the particularly disturbing elements, though there is no indication that the victim was Palestinian. Reports consistently refer to the location and nature of the crime, but do not specify the victim's ethnicity. What's also very alarming to me is that it was very clearly documented, very clearly highlighted, and yet still to this moment, it appears that there's no real motion with it. Here's Ynet. This is from the 28th. Court extends detention of the young man from Modin Ilit suspected of sodomizing a teen. It's like they're putting this off and they don't want to deal with it. It says that it extended by 5 days the detention who was arrested on suspicion of sodomizing this young boy in the showers of a swimming pool. According to suspicion, he entered the boy's stall while he was showering under the pretext of needing soap, choked him, held a knife to him, and sodomized him. Here's the guy. A court has extended a detention. Authorities say he threatened the victim. A court noted that the new evidence worsened the suspicions against him, leading to his detention being extended. You see how crazy this is? Like, if the evidence is so cut and dry, why? I mean, I just think we'll follow up on this, but I'll make my point next with these other articles with where I think this is going. Reports allege the attack includes extreme acts of violence. The suspect initially confessed to the police, but later retracted the confession. This is almost always how this goes in these cases because they know that they have support. Somebody probably told them, lie about it. We'll back you up. Just my gut. Claiming it was made under duress. Israeli police have allowed the publication of his name. On and on. Okay. But let's also not forget, almost exclusively to Palestinians, though, Israeli police will force them to say whatever they want. And it's very clearly on the record like that they do that. It's all over the place. Why they would force an Israeli, especially right now, to admit to something like this doesn't add up, but you can decide for yourself. Now, where I want to go with this, and we will follow up on this. I mean, it's just disgusting reality. And the real point to make is how prevalent this is in this society. And that in no way am I going to argue that that's unique to Jewish people. It is unique in this case to the Zionist mentality in this country. But you'll find horrible things like this in pretty much any society. But the reality is that in this society, it's not hard to see how long this has been called out, how long it's been allowed and festered, and in many cases, like almost celebrated. First, here's another case from this location. Modin Ilit rape was fabricated, police say. I just thought it was interesting to consider that now that's where this one seems to be leaning into. Well, no, I was forced to say that. It's not true. This whole case came out where this 5-year-old was abused and raped, or that was what was reported, and ultimately they ended up turning it on the person that said that he made the report up. Now, maybe that does happen, but with all that's going on, it makes you wonder whether this was a cover-up then. Now, the only reason I'm even including that is because of what I'm going to show you next. And I think this is very important to see, which most of you know, well, after this, and including this recent case with an Israeli who came to the United States, works for the U.S. or the Israeli government, was trying to sexually abuse a child, got caught, and they let him go. Absolutely abhorrent. So Sal the Agorist asked, so many unanswered questions about the Israeli pedophile Trump helped escape. How many American children did he rape? Was he part of the Epstein ring? Was Trump pressured by Mossad? Why does no one from Congress care? That one really stands out to me, guys. Think about that. How is that not a thing that gets brought up by anybody? I don't. Maybe did Massey or Marjorie Taylor Greene bring it up? I think maybe one of them points to it, but by and large, if not any of them, I haven't seen it. Where are the courts? The whole thing makes zero sense. He says, why isn't the news covering the story? Some of them did, obviously, but not like what I mean by that, what I think he does too, is like the Fox, CNN, like nightly news kind of thing. Why was Jared Kushner involved? If he was mistakenly released, why hasn't the U.S. requested an extradition? If he was intentionally released, what's the official explanation? Why did the DOJ initially deny that it happened in the first place? Because we know why. Now, on top of that, I found this weird. So this is another story, another horrible story of a migrant that allegedly raped this woman. I haven't looked into it, is why they say that. Because, these days, it's so many lies circulating. But, it does happen. So just the point is not the story here, but to show you that there's another case of the report of a child being raped. And this person says he had prior records of sexual assault and multiple robberies. Yet the Spanish government was subsidizing him with our taxpayer money. Why was he deported? Now, I agree with that. If this guy was a criminal, why was he being allowed to stay? Why was nothing done? Like, that's crazy, no matter where it is in the world. And it does happen all over the place, and not just for specific migrants against white people. Like, this game that's being played right now is disgusting. Here's what Elon says. Anyone who commits rape, robbery, or other violent crime should be deported immediately. I thought about that for a second, and I'm like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that you're supporting the idea that people come from foreign countries, rape somebody, and just get sent home? Guys, think about that for a second. Does that make sense to you? Like, if somebody gets caught raping somebody, the whole point that he was making about extradition is they should charge them here. They should go to prison. They should be charged. Elon literally just said, send them home. And also, that's just what happened with the Israeli. I feel like there's more to that personally. Because what she's saying is he committed crimes, and then they didn't deport him, but they also didn't charge him with anything. So my point would be, if somebody commits a crime in this country, then they should be arrested for that crime. They should be charged for that crime, right? They should be dealt with here, not sent home to a place where they won't charge them because it's a different country. I mean, do we not see how obvious that is? That seems like a really weird thing for him to say. But I think it makes sense when you look at what just happened. But here is the bigger point of the story. American Jewish Committee reports that we commend IDF leadership, they write, for investigating concerning allegations of abuse against Palestinian detainees at said Tiaman. As IDF chief of staff, he said, that's precisely these investigations that protect our soldiers in Israel and the world and preserve our values. Yeah, disgusting. Because their investigation came back to, like, they rape people in this prison. It was very publicly covered. Here is B'Tselem, the leading Israeli human rights group. It's called Welcome to Hell. And they literally talk about the torture camps and set Tiaman, and the rapes that took place are a central part of this. On the corporate media in Israel, they debated publicly that was supposed to happen. And you know which side won, clearly. People stormed these places to get the people released for being arrested for raping the Palestinians. And by the way, it's happened many times since then. So this is the American Jewish Committee praising them for investigating and then lying about the outcome. The point is that this is happening. Allowing a rape culture like that within the core. Now, here is a report from 2024. Claims of Israeli sexual assault of Palestinian women are credible, according to the UN. I should have put that at the end. This is the one that I wanted. This is from 2014. More Israeli soldiers reporting sexual harassment. Now, this is within the Israeli government. Male soldiers make up to 9% of the reports, claimed 4% of two. The point is, more Israeli soldiers reported experiencing sexual abuse in 2013 than they did in 2012. The Army Chief of Staff's Women Affairs Advisor has reported. So they get reports, which, again, you can go back pretty much year to year. Okay, this is Haaretz. They're saying in 2012, there's reports of rape and sexual abuse of women in the IDF. Okay, they report about it. They talk about it. The next year, it gets worse. There's been more soldiers now in 2013 that have been abused. Okay. Jump forward to 2016. Israeli army reports rise in sexual harassment claims, a decrease in investigations. Story speaks for itself. Haaretz, leading Israeli newspaper. Number of reported incidents has increased every year since 2012. Every year. So 2012, they reported it gets worse. 2013, they reported it gets worse. 2014, they reported it gets worse. 2015, they go, what's happening? It gets even worse. Number of reported incidents has increased every year, but fewer women are pursuing legal action. Why? Because they're not investigating. Read the article for yourself. Here, and this is the two that I've always used in the past. This is 2017. Now it's gone to 1 in 6. One in every 6 females in the IDF have been sexually harassed, according to an Army study, or rather a study within the Army. 1 in 6. So 2012 and before, it just keeps getting worse. People point to it. They just stop investigating. And now it gets to the point to 1 in every 6 women is being sexually assaulted. And let's find out what happens next. Jump forward to 2022. Well, now a third of every Israeli female soldiers are being raped. 2021, a third. So they report in this bombshell report that 1 in every 6 women is being sexually abused, and then it doubles by 2022. I mean, I don't know how you can misunderstand this, guys. This is a sick problem. Not every single person, because some people call this stuff out. Some people protest Gaza, but a societal problem that has been created by a sociopathic Zionist ideology that is literally cheerleading about rape and torture. And it's horrifying, guys. And everyone's starting to see it. Here is a report from 2023, the next year. The IDF has a problem with female soldiers. That's the title. Here's what it says, guys. This is disgusting. It seems the IDF has an internal problem that it needs to address. This is Jerusalem Post. A report from 2021 says that a third of Israeli female soldiers experienced sexual harassment during their mandatory service. A state's comptroller, by the way, that's the whole point of why they're all forced to go to the military, therefore they're all IDF in some capacity. A state's comptroller's report, and again, there are, like I've always pointed out, certain exceptions, so it's let every single person, but by and large. A state comptroller report found that less than half of the Israeli female soldiers who experienced harassment even filed a complaint. So if we're being told 1 in 3, and they're telling you half the people being raped don't even report it, that's borderline every one of them, guys. That's so shockingly disgusting. Of those 44%, 44% said their complaints were not handled properly. Okay, so again, the report found that less than half of the people that actually experienced harassment filed a complaint, and then 44% of that half said they weren't being handled properly. And 26% stated that the complaints were not handled at all. This is just chilling stuff, guys. It says, unfortunately, this isn't unusual in what's considered male-dominated environments. From Israeli's perspective, the Israeli government's perspective, one would assume that given these issues, leaders in Israel would do everything in their power to ensure that the army became a safer place for women, right? At least what they project to the world, and would then push for accountability in any harassment, right? However, a public letter published by these rabbis, promoted by the government, from the religious Zionism camp, of course, stated that, quote, "For generations, the Rabbinate Council has determined that women should not serve in the army, and the conscription of women spoils the line," is the word they use. That's in Hebrew. They went even further to say that because of sexual harassment, women should not serve in the IDF. So your issue is not that they're raping everybody in the IDF that are women, but that they're getting in the way. So you explain to me how this perspective is any different than what they claim Iranians do with women, or that Saudi Arabia, which they don't talk about, or anybody they don't like. It's just in your face. It's insulting. Now, last point on this topic. You already saw this. Mia Shem refused to give a hair sample, and the witness from Miami, it's a weird kind of translation, the case that rocked Israel with the collapse. And we covered this. She accused her trainer of raping her in Israel. Now, Israeli authorities at this moment are still refusing to believe that she was raped. She claims she was drugged and raped by her trainer. Now, she says unless she submits a hair sample. So what they're saying is, we don't believe you unless you prove it. Well, that sure sounds familiar, doesn't it? Remember when we were saying we don't believe your screaming claims until we have evidence? And they said, oh, you're a rape denial. Hypocrites. They know what they were doing then. They were lying about rape, and these monsters now appear to be denying that she was raped. They were using the claim of their rape before, and now they're denying that when she's actually raped because it's an Israeli that did it. Meanwhile, the authorities promptly believe any allegation of rape if the accused are Palestinians. Do you realize how sick this is? That she is one of the people they kept using, and now she comes home and she gets raped by an Israeli trainer, and they don't care. Now on to the last discussion of what's going on with the ongoing genocide. Now, I almost wonder how this conversation the idea of the ceasefire deal is so ridiculous. I don't even know who out there actually, like every single time it's happened so far with Blinken and now the new administration, they just keep getting caught lying over and over and over. And I mean, on the surface, from mainstream administrations, or rather, like institutions, I meant to say, like, human rights groups that will literally call it out, or any number of institutions or other, even mainstream platforms. They keep agreeing. Hamas then agrees. Then Netanyahu blows it up. What we tell you, here, check this out. If you're new, this is, there it is. No. I think this was it. That we wrote about this many times. Yeah. See, this is Israel. Oh, no, that's not the one. Well, it's funny. This is from 2025 in March. Israel breaks ceasefire as planned. The earlier one, I think it's the one before this. My point was simple, that Trump, the ceasefire deal that Trump already plans to break. And we told you that before it happened. And then within the week time frame we told you that they were telling you it would happen, it happened. And yet we have to break that down? No, they were publicly in the Knesset saying we're going to violate it in phase 2 because Trump said we could. And we can't piece that together? No, we're just being lied to by media, by government, because they're compromised or don't care. And so the point is, yet again, Netanyahu wrote the latest ceasefire plan. Hamas agreed to it, and Netanyahu killed it. It's every single time. And so they just keep pretending like Hamas won't let it happen. It says, Haaretz confirmed that Egypt took the plan that Netanyahu wrote, told Palestinians to agree to it word for word, and Israel was the one that broke it yet again. Every time. Every single time. Seth Dillon says, Donald Trump says, the fastest way to end humanitarian crises in Gaza is for Hamas to surrender and release the hostages. That is the dumbest take in the room. One, because they've already tried to do that more than once, and Israel keeps saying no. The last time, before this one we're talking about, they literally said that we'll do everything you're asking. We'll step aside, we'll put our weapons down. And Israel is the one that put Hamas back in the agreement. They were saying, look, we'll step aside, and Israel disagreed to that and inserted back that Hamas was still involved in the government. So many people acted like that was unbelievable, like it's not true. It was on the record. Just because it was so hard to make sense with the narrative, people dismissed it. It's because they need Hamas in the context that they're framing it to justify what they're doing. Because they want everyone killed. They want everyone moved to this new location. That's what's happening. And on top of that, again, they've turned down the deal that would have done that many times. This person says, this was true on October 8th, and it remains true today. Ridiculous. And I can't even tell if this is satire, so I can't tell if he's trying to be funny about it. He says, anyone who hasn't been calling for Hamas to surrender and release the hostages could never convince me that they actually care. Just for sake of conversation, pretending it's real, because a lot of people are making that point. It has got to be this. They are either dishonest or they just genuinely don't know the basic facts of the situation. Probably both. Comrade Misty simply points out in regard to the Gaza plan, the Gaza Trust plan, which I will include again today. It's right here, but I won't go through it. Check out the last show. She simply says, they are genociding entire population for luxury tourism. You don't hate them enough. U.S. post-war Gaza plan calls for temporary relocation. In other words, forced ethnic cleansing of residents to clear the way for luxury tourism. It's just, every definition of this stuff. There's so many uneducated people that somehow have been convinced they know everything about a situation that are all over the mainstream alternative media right now. It's horrifying. And out there literally talking about things that so clearly don't know and laughing at people that actually know what they're talking about. And it's not even about good, bad Israel. It's about like fundamental facts that anyone can prove they cared, that they like laugh off because that's not what the narrative said. You know, it's really stupid stuff. The point, though, is that this is obviously a genocide. This is obviously ethnic cleansing by the exact definition of the word. Even if you agree with Israel, it's still ethnic cleansing, guys. That's what it means. It's very, very clear. This is about the bigger point, though, of what they're trying to turn this into. And I mean, again, watch the last show. This is a smart city, right? This is quite literally everything we thought we were, the Republicans thought they were fighting. Land trust and tokenization. And I mean, I'll show you very quickly. For example, check out the Elon Musk Smart Manufacturing Zone. This is under Gaza Plan City. Zero ground construction. It says modern AI-powered smart planned cities. And their inner side, the services and economy of these cities will be done through ID-based digital system. Great. So everything we're fighting that the Republican team is rolling out in Gaza, though, but it's okay because we don't care over there. Who can make sense of this without acknowledging that you're being a hypocrite? And just AF post, Trump's post-war Gaza plan proposes a voluntary mass removal of Gaza's 2 million, they keep writing, even though they've admitted they know they've killed probably 500,000 people, with $5,000 cash payments. Of course, not cash payments, so AF post is incorrect, which, you know, makes you should question all these like these kind of like, you know, posts of what happens every day. There, a lot of them are just kind of repeating what's in the headlines. Okay, the idea is that it's not cash. It's very clearly they give them digital payments. They can then exchange tokens for the housing systems they're going to build for them. That's what they're talking about. So, and in doing so, they have to sign over their rights to any kind of ownership of what's happening in Gaza because that's what it's always been about. Overall, bribing them with, you know, what, peanuts after they got their families murdered, raped, and tortured. But not even real money that has to be then used to change in for the fake system they're building for you, all under the Abraham Accords, because, you know, with the GHF, by the way, which is also true, the Gaza Health Humanitarian Foundation, which is Mossad murdering people in the food lines right now, they're the ones supposedly doing, was it security? Basically either security or it was aid in particular. But then on the security side of it, at least one group was Academy, Blackwater. Very, very, very pro-Israel. Like, these people are not on the side of the Palestinians. They're creating a concentration camp like they do everywhere else. So on the ground, as this is happening, right? So what they're telling him is you got to move. You got to move over there because we're going to build this for you. We're trying to fight Hamas. No Palestinian believes that. And they're not even trying to lie to the Palestinians. The Palestinians know. The Israelis know what they're doing, and they know the Palestinians know what they're doing. They're trying to just murder everyone they can. It's pretty obvious to prove. So what they're doing is telling the world that false narrative. So liars out there can say they're just trying to save them all, which is just insane to me. I should go to this point first. Oh, dang it. Where was that? Right here. This feels like it should go next, which is that what they're doing to increase the aid all of a sudden, but only to the ISIS-linked drug-dealing proxy warlord, Abu Shabaab, which is literally what he is. Even in Knesset, they've publicly admitted this. They've discussed his ISIS connections. But let's pretend ISIS is working with Hamas, right? It's just so stupid. This guy, who is the same people that were stealing the aid they claimed was Hamas before, that was working for Israel, it's all very proven. Robert and I have talked about it. It's on the record, guys. The point is they're giving them a little bit more aid and shifting them to a new location and saying, well, you have to go to that new spot to get aid if you don't want to starve to death. So they're just continuing this shuffle where they're pushing them to the next location. As it says, the final phase of the genocide concentrate the entire group in a gang-run concentration camp on Egypt's borders, wipe out everything remaining in the Gaza City and Deir al-Balah, and then mass expulsion. That's what they're building towards. And it goes, reminder, the ISIS-linked Abu Shabaab criminal gang is armed, financed, supported, and run by Israel. It's not hard to see. That's an Israeli article discussing what we've already proven to you more than once. So, Ryan Grimm, whenever the Israeli military takes losses, which it does pretty much consistently in this situation, the attacks on civilians ramp up exponentially, which shows you the kind of like this petty hatred, right? To where they lose in regard to fighting Hamas, and all of a sudden they, you know, just decide to kill civilians because they're angry. It's disgusting. And insane Israeli bombardment on the 29th has been ongoing for hours. Think about why they're still bombarding flattened areas where people are living in tents. But there are still the clowns out there pretending like this isn't ethnic cleansing, isn't a genocide. Aaron Mate. More horrifying images, by the way, of children bombed in these areas. It happens every single day. Says we've seen countless Israeli atrocities, but not every atrocity is captured on camera. So Israel has exterminated, maimed, and traumatized far more Palestinians in Gaza than we can possibly know. Yet even the fraction of Israeli massacres that we do see is treated as normal. Gaza is a worse collective moral failure than the Nazi Holocaust. Back then, the world wasn't exposed to the horrors of the concentration camps in this Holocaust. They've live streamed every day, and we're funding it. This stuff is in my nightmares, guys. It's just the reality of our worst possible nightmare of what the world is like. And I don't believe even for a moment this is even the majority. I do believe, though, that the worst parts of our world are like screaming for control right now. Maybe because we're slowly awakening to the problem, but nonetheless, dangerous. Assault Rod, Israel murderers journalists because they don't want you to see things like this. It's every day. You realize this is not like the same old ones repeated that have been shown over the last year. Every single day, there is more examples of children being bombed in buildings and they're pulling and look, that's Twitter just randomly stopping it like it does all the time when it's videos that they don't want you to see. Every day. Like, and some of them get, like the girl that people identified that was shredded hanging off that building, right? These are real people with lives and dreams and hopes and families. And every single day they're killed in this country because they hate them. Brian Grimm points out what Musab Abu Toa says. Israeli terrorist forces have bombed families evacuating al-Nasir neighborhood. So again, they're saying, move this direction. And as they do, they bomb them on the way. We heard the Green Beret in regard to the food lines where they said, march that way. And they were like waiting along the road to shoot at them as they went, like it was some game. But he's a liar. No, there's been 75 people that have told us that. The idea clearly is that just like from day one, on October 8th, what were we telling you? Egypt told us they were bombing the food lines. Egypt said they were bombing people as they tried to flee. Egypt said they bombed the crossing. Oh, yeah. And that's happened every single time since. Every single time they say, go over there. They bomb where they're going. They bomb where they were. They bomb them on the way. Guys, going forward in history, this will be looked back on in so many ways that we can't. I honestly get the sense like what Aaron is saying is not even getting close to the reality. Like, it's worse. This will be something that remember what I said at the beginning? I said, this will be remembered for 10,000 years. You see why I was saying that? Because this is something that is going to change things more ways than we could possibly understand. And as Ryan says, bombed if you stay, bombed if you go. Anybody honest can see this. This one says, terrorist Israeli forces have just carried out, and this is all happening on the 1st. This is yesterday. Carried out a terrorist strike on people evacuating their houses. So they say again, go over there for food, and they keep killing them as they come out to flee to the area they told them to go to. 7 people died in this one strike. Ryan Grimm, Israel continues to attack the civilians they have told to flee as they flee. Israel Exposed points out the Israeli army called the young man Mohammed al-Tabasi, originally from Tel al-Sultan in Rafah, and ordered him to leave his tent, stand on a dune in the Sawafi area in Khan Yunis, behind the Ramah camp for displaced people, so they could target him alone. He was told that if he refused, knowing that they were going to shoot at him, that his family in the camp would be targeted instead. That's the sociopathic, psychopathic elements we're dealing with. We're going to murder your family if you don't come out and let us shoot you. Didn't we just kind of see something similar with the ICE at the door of that barbershop going, we'll get your family then? Yes, because we're dealing with similar mentalities here. It says he was told that if he refused, they'd go after his family. He bid farewell to his loved ones and said, quote, let people pray for me and forgive me. He ran toward the sand dune, raised his hands to begin prayer, and they bombed him. If you'd like to read more about this, it's reported by the Euromed Human Rights Group that documented the entire event. Targeted for refusing to cooperate, disturbing testimonies detail Israeli army's harassment, killing of civilians in Gaza. See, there's so much of this going on. And at least so far, We haven't seen any accountability of like individual IDF members, despite how much they like dance and laugh and post videos of the worst things we've ever seen. So I bet you many of them think that they're never going to get held accountable. I hope they're wrong. And it's stuff like this that show you they're just laughing in your face. Catherine Austin Fitts points to what Mohammed Safa says and says, this is not Hiroshima. This is Gaza. Gaza is nearly 3 times smaller than Hiroshima, and Israel has dropped the equivalent of nearly 10 atomic bombs on Gaza. Easily backed up by any human rights group, any institution. It's true. More, by the way, combined than pretty much every major war. Don't stop talking about Gaza as if your life depends on it, he says, because their lives depend on it. And look at what they're bombing. I mean, look at the area before they bomb it. That's a bombed out, broken area. And they bomb it anyway. Probably because they're trying to survive in there. Catherine Austin Fitts says, ever wonder what Donald J. Trump would say if we bombed Mar-a-Lago using taxpayer money, proposed to move the Trump family and friends out since it was such a mess, as he framed Gaza, rebuilt a lovely waterfront development that we owned and promised we would give each of the Trump family members a new apartment in our new beautiful resort, so they should not complain because that was a good deal, right? Exactly. On top of that, give them tokenized digital money that they have to give back to me to be able to take, quote, control over something you don't own, right? Now, I just had a secondary thought, by the way. First, obviously is the same idea. You're murdering people's families, you're bombing their homes, you're forcing them out of where they live, and then saying it's insulting to not take what we hand you, even though it's another place where you're in control of our lives and we have no freedom and Israel still will kill us. But it's okay though, because it's insulting for you to say no. Now, secondarily, by the way, I think think about this. Just saying this right now is interesting to me with people that are going out, like they put up that poster of Vance that says, arrest him for what did it say? For, it was something like weakness or something like that. Like it just said, $1 million wanted. And it was like, I forget what excuse me. And hiccups all of a sudden, what the term was they used. But the point was there was a crosshair on his head, which, yes, can in one sense mean kill them. And we could even say probably what they meant, but you don't know that. And you can't then infer that means kill them. And then they're making this huge push. I bet you something happens to this person. They're all tagging Kash Patel and Bongino and Bam Bondi. They just went after a woman for flipping off and bumping someone's phone that they're being sued and expelled. The point, though, is that you can see a world in which they go after people, even for me reading this, for saying something like that. Even though it's not even about the actual claim of doing it, it's about an analogy point. But the woke right is just as crazy as the woke left for things like this, and will start making a case for why you suddenly threaten to try. Loomer would do stuff like that. Just how ridiculous this has gotten today. Now, world's leading genocide scholars Association says Israel's committing a genocide. Now, you all know this already, but it's important how complete this has become. The International Association of Genocide Scholars passed a resolution determining Israel was committing a genocide with the support of 86% of its members, meaning they support that is what's happening. Adi Haku, probably mispronouncing that, shows you this. Quote, this is a definitive statement from the experts in the field of genocide studies. That's what is going on the ground in Gaza is a genocide, says the president. Pretty easy. Mohammed Safa points out the bigger picture, the obvious. UN has said it's genocide. The Red Cross said it's genocide. The PVA said it's genocide. The ICJ says genocide. The ICC said it's genocide. Pretty much every human rights group, Doctors Without Borders, all of them. By the way, apparently, Doctors Without Borders is now being called a terrorist organization. Not a joke. They're claiming that they're working for Hamas in the U.S. overlap UN conversation. It's just so insane how dumb this has got. How dumb it's become, rather. So Hamas is now Doctors Without Borders because they dare not. They just keep calling out your lies, is what it really is. Anyway, he goes, anyone who knows anything about genocide has now said it's a genocide. Now, yes, is it possible that they're all lying? Yeah, that's all. Anything is possible, and you should always consider them all. Be objective. But unless there's evidence that shows that, and all you're doing is they're probably lying, then you're ignoring that the vast majority of the experts on the topic are telling us the case. Now, we just went through COVID, where the vast majority of the experts were telling you, well, that's actually not even really true. But in the beginning, the majority of the mainstream push was that it was safe. And that's not true, right? So you should question it. But again, we had evidence that showed you it was dangerous. And again, you go forward like another 6 months. No, I argue that a huge portion of experts that weren't being acknowledged were telling you it's dangerous. Either way, the reality is that every single one of these entities have now shown you it is genocide. We can prove it's genocide. They're committing a genocide. They're posting their genocide. They're laughing about it. They're telling you they're going to starve them. And it's just obvious what's happening. We shouldn't even have to debate about it. But you get these idiots like this. You get Alan Dershowitz that comes out and goes, there's no reasonable definition of genocide that even comes close to characterizing Israel's self-defense. I mean, it just takes a special, I mean, that is him blindly and desperately taking the side of Israel over every single other standing on the conversation. And so, and again, that's what Muhammad said there. Everyone was standing, says genocide. The only people not saying that are people like this, who are interested in, who have, vested interest in the Zionist agenda or are trying to destroy this country. The so-called experts, he says, who have claimed that Israel has committed genocide are willfully misusing the term. No, not even remotely, and exploiting their claimed expertise to promote a bigoted agenda. Oh, that's what it is. All of them just hate Israel, right? All of them at the core, not even just Israel, they hate Jews. That's what he's saying. That's really what they mean. So every single group ever that accuses them of a crime just actually hates them. At some point, this has to become stupid, right? It's just clearly not the reality of what's happening, even though there's probably an overlap. No objective expert would agree with them, except literally all of them do. See how dumb that is? Like, so every person was standing, that's the truth. Every one of them, Limkin Institute, all of them are telling you it's genocide. So what he's saying is no objective experts. All he means is literally no expert on genocide in the world is objective. The time has come for the conference of unbiased experts. Okay? And I just posted that below, by the way. Asal Rod points out what Israel said on Twitter, which is embarrassing. It goes, above all, the experts on genocide have set a historic precedent for the first time. Genocide scholars accuse the very victim of genocide. Oh, so you're the victim in this situation, right? Or no, they're still pointing to October 7th, mind you. So even if you want to claim that everything you lied about that day happened, even though we can prove that's not true and that you killed most of the people on that day, which has now become the fact, you've committed a genocide for over a year. So is it just supposed to be ignored because that happened on that day, even though you lied about it? I mean, you just can't make sense of this. They're still pretending they're victims right now, and everyone's waking up to it. Ryan Grimm, the world's leading association of genocide scholars has passed the resolution. We just read that, right? And Ryan Grimm says, found some new people for the U.S. to sanction. Watch. Rubio, they'll do what their masters tell them. Caitlin Johnstone reports what Ahmed Shihada says, which is the world's leading genocide scholar. Same point. Israel committing genocide in Gaza. Caitlin says everyone needs to understand that there is no genocide in Gaza is not a claim that can be taken seriously. All human rights groups and the overwhelming majority of genocide scholars all agree it's a genocide. The debate is over. Hasbar's lost. That is true. Here is what Ilan Pappé had to say about the understanding of what happened in like the first Nakba and before and after, and how Israel has taken careful care to cover that up. And just to think about not only what they're trying to do in real time, but what they will continue to do if we allow this to go forward.
Of the Jewish community themselves wrote in their diaries that what the Israelis did in October 1948 was not very different from what the Nazis did in the Second World War. So within 9 months, half of Palestine's population was expelled, half of Palestine's villages were demolished, and most of the Palestinian towns were wiped out. The Israelis already in August 1948 began an operation that I call mRNA in order to wipe out any residue and remnant of the Palestinian existence in Palestine. They built Jewish colonies and settlements over the destroyed Palestinian villages, quite often giving them a Hebrew name that resembled the Arab name of the village. Thus, Safaria became Tzipori, Lubia became Lavi, and so on. On other villages, the Israeli planted forests. The Israelis imported 10,000 pine trees from Europe to cover the Palestinian villages that were destroyed in the catastrophe of 48. I can tell you, as a second generation of European settler, that we don't do well in the climate of the Middle East. And the same happened to the pine trees of Israel. Many of them became very ill, and where they died, the old orchards and olive trees came back to claim their presence on the land that used to be Palestine.
He's an important person to listen to in this conversation. So Caitlin Johnstone points out antiwar.com, Israeli officials say Israel may halt the meager aid entered northern Gaza amid the famine. The Israeli military is trying to force more than 1 million civilians in Gaza, where famine is taking place, to move southern. And now the additional part, as we showed earlier, is claiming to have more aid in the point you might have to go to, and then killing them along the way. Caitlin says, Israel, we're going to starve Gaza. Because realize, they're stating that for what, the 15th time? The West? Us, rather? Israel starving Gaza. Israel? It's anti-Semitic to say we're starving Gaza. The West? Okay, sorry. Israel? We're going to starve Gaza some more. Like, it's just this dumb cycle. We watch them do it. They tell you they're doing it, and we get gaslit by people in power. Now, let's remember this clip. And remember, this is, by the way, not a secret. Okay? Their actual statement, or their, whatever you want to call it, tagline, motto for Mossad, by way of deception, thou shalt do war. Look it up. It's very real. So in that sense, and everything else we've talked about today, let's not forget this important gem. Remember when Mossad admitted that it conducts psyops all around the world? Here it is again. I don't know how I did that. See, I swear I do that almost every time. I think what I do while I'm grabbing this, I number them like 1 through whatever, and I think I just double up on a number and I lose a video somehow. And I have to talk to you while I download this. If you remember this clip, this was off the back of the pager attack. Actually, I'll grab that. I'll grab that too while we're doing this. And it's the conversation that the Mossad agent had in his, the same way they dress up when they're pretending to be Hamas, by the way, and tells 60 Minutes. Oh, here's that. Israel's infiltration of U.S. tech in light of Lebanon's pager attack. The point, telling her, we create a pretend world. It's the same thing we just talked about with Carbine, with Gideon. It's the same thing, that Israel creates companies that they then use to execute their Israeli agendas, their intelligence agendas. The CIA does the same thing. The point, though, is that this is important in regard to the infiltration of our country. And it's what they're doing. And it's not just our country. It's all around the world. The UK is dealing with a similar problem. But this is what he said. And I think it's important with this and the next clip we're going to play.
How did you convince Hezbollah to buy this?
Well, obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from, or think they were buying it from?
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
That's not like a fake thing, guys. The world is our stage. I mean, you combine that with what they're doing. You combine that with the statements in the Knesset that they can legislate anywhere in the world, that they're not bound by international law. It takes a special kind of willful ignorance to not acknowledge what this government is doing. It's right in your face. Literally, I mean, look, if they're telling you the world is their stage, they can make fake companies to execute their intelligence agendas. That's me going, I effing told you so. That's exactly what I've been telling you for how long? And it's everywhere you look. And now we've got AI Gideon pre-crime tools that were built by Israel that are being rolled out. I mean, come on, guys. This is where I need people in the partisan side who are honest to start calling this stuff out, because you're on the side of the right. You're on the right side of history with this stuff, guys. And you're being led by the screaming people at the top of the status quo. And I'm not even talking about corporate media here. So going forward, there's 2 more points I want to make, really. Just what Israel did elsewhere, and some final points on foreign policy, because we have we're looking good. We're not too long today. You might have seen that Israel has continued to bomb Yemen, which I just pointed out the other day in regard to what they want to happen with Gaza. There's a very clear central kind of intersection right there that they have been coveting for a very long time, and also they need Yemen out of the way. And that's why how long have we talked about this? Iran is an issue for them, and that's why they've been trying to deal with other ways around it, right? Because the Persian Gulf and the whole Strait of Hormuz, Iran can control that. They can shut it down. So they need to control the Bab el-Mandeb Strait on the other side, which is where Yemen meets Africa. And then, of course, they have the Egypt aspect of it in the Sinai, and they control these locations, right? So they need to get that Yemen part of it down there, but they're also in regard to, it comes down to not just the flow of oil and goods around the Horn of Africa, or not the Horn of Africa, but the, the Mesopotamian area. But it also comes back to the idea of the potential pipelines and different things that if you line up these old deals they've presented, and it all goes right through this area. So this is in addition to all of that, this is just them, I think, maliciously going after people that they, it's my opinion, but politicians in the world who are calling out Israel. Now, it's harder to make that happen in a place like the US and the UK, but we see the threats. Our own people, like our ex-CIA out there, will tell you that's what they do. Many of them will speak out about it. Actually, before I talk about this, here's a clip that you probably remember. And this is, it was on Piers Morgan, actually, and it was with, what's his name? Cenk Uygur. And it's the pretend son of the, well, I only say pretend because of the way, but he's the, son of the Hamas guy that kind of does the circuit and acts like he, knows, and he speaks on behalf of like the anti-Hamas. It's very, very weird. And of course, he's, one of these frequent kind of mRNA, that fake platform is run by Israeli intelligence that Loomer and Jones and everyone loves to point to and go, look at how bad Muslims are. It's literally run by Israeli intelligence. You can look it up. The point is that this guy said on the air, slipped up, I think, that they'll go after any politician, no matter where they are, if they don't agree with Israel's agenda. And I think we're watching that play out.
In a way, it doesn't matter where they are. Even if they are politicians in the West, they are going to fall. And I said this previously.
Hold on, did you hear what he just said? And remember, he's an Israeli agent. Are you saying Israel will murder politicians in the West? What do you mean the politicians in the West will fall?
Yeah, we will not vote for them anymore.
Oh, no, well, you don't vote for them now. You're not in our country.
We have the right to bring them up and to bring them down.
Who is we, and how are you bringing down politicians in the West if they dare to defy Israel?
Now that was cut, but it was very well capsulated because he did just like that. When he basically just smiled in a weird, like very creepy way when asked point blank, what do you mean by that? And I mean, he said it very clearly. That will bring them down, like, oh, well, we'll vote for you. It's like, well, that was a pretty clumsy response because, like, rightly so, you don't vote now. So clearly he was threatening politicians no matter where they are if they don't side with Israel. Really not hard to recognize. So when we see things like this, I think we're watching that play out. Now, here's what Abby wrote. Israel can murder the prime minister of Yemen with zero consequences. If Yemen killed Netanyahu, nukes would already be flying. Now, on top of that, it's now been confirmed that Yemeni prime minister, the next one, what I was thinking of, anyway, was assassinated by IDF airstrike. They've already claimed it. He was killed alongside a number of state ministers, doing what Yemen's presidential office says was a routine government workshop. This is the point. Israel wiped out the civilian leadership, not military, the civilian leadership of Yemen, but left the military leadership intact. Unclear what advantage they get from these mass assassinations of political figures. Houthis now saying a line has been crossed and there will be consequences. There'll be retaliation, which they should. They have every right to, especially based on the argument Israel puts out every day, that they have the right to defend themselves. The point, though, is that this is focused on the civilian element. So I argue it's because they were the ones standing up and saying Israel's committing genocide. And maybe they hope the military would kind of fall in line, but I think they misjudged the Houthis and what they've shown well before October 7th, that they have stood up against the power structure. It's been going on a long time. I'm not even saying that means they're good guy. It just means that they are standing at great expense to themselves for the people of Yemen against the people trying to destroy the country. Pretty clear to me. Decide for yourself. Here, all we're seeing is Israel deliberately, publicly targeting civilian government, executing them all, and acting like that's okay. I just think that's shocking. And, I guess I should have played, I had it lined up separately. But yeah, and this is a shout out to Gary O'Brien for reminding me of that. So I think it's worth considering that they're just simply taking out people that they can. This is the member was she the just the member of parliament. I was trying to remember if she was above that, but Irene Montero, Israel just assassinated Yemen's prime minister and nothing happens. Israel is the only entity that can commit genocide, bomb 5 countries, kill a prime minister, and still claim to be the victim. That's what she just said. So get ready for her to be targeted. I'm genuinely mean that. Like this, that is the obvious truth, and you're not allowed to say that in power today. Said John Fetterman, showing you the other side of the conversation. He goes, thank you, next. Moron. I mean, it doesn't matter how you, you claiming that an entire group, they're all terrorists, so it doesn't make any, I mean, even claiming they're terrorists, you understand, what point in time did we just accept that our government could claim terrorism and then just murder anybody in the area? I just don't even know if that makes sense. I thought in the historical point, not even that long ago, we used to pretend like we wanted to put them on trial, didn't we? It just seems so crazy how quickly this got ridiculous. And now you have morons like Fetterman who have been put in place by people that I think are controlling them and are ultimately just going, yeah, murder more people that we don't like. I mean, this is the point at which we need to start being real about how bad this is going. Now, of course, Alex Jones, doing his usual duty, is out there going, yeah, let's go after Venezuela, which is crazy. He goes, I'll say it. I'm for removing the Venezuelan dictatorship. By dictatorship, it means a group that was voted in by popular vote and supported by hundreds of international observers, right? Somebody that even Jimmy Carter in the past said was one of the best democracy. I'm not saying I can prove that. We should question it. And frankly, I think it's hard to believe that anything like that exists, especially with governments and manipulation, including with Venezuela's. However, as always, evidence shows us one thing, and all you get is them yelling a different narrative. The evidence speaks for itself. The reality is that what they claim about Venezuela has been lies you can prove. The starvation, what they did to their government, what they did to their people. They lie. They lie in Syria, like they lie in Libya, like they lie. But Jones is like, yay, I like the government lies because we're the rebels fighting the deep state. Pretty sure the same deep state you said you're fighting was just trying to overthrow Venezuela, right? Right? When it was Biden, right? And now you want to do it too? Anybody else can piece that together, guys. He's supporting the deep state agenda. If anything he says makes sense. Daniel says, how can we ever finally bury neoconism when the anti-neocons, in quotes, all become neocons when it's their pet project? This is why I love Daniel McAdams. And I don't think we agree on everything, but he just has integrity and he's calling it like he sees it. And he says, let's be clear here. This regime change Alex Jones is pushing will benefit the very elites that he has made untold millions denouncing throughout his career. Yep, that's pretty clear. Now, of course, there's one reason. I think there's many of them. Venezuela. President says Israel's committing genocide. Right? Just to include it what we were just talking about. I honestly don't even think that's the primary point. The United States has been going after Venezuela for a really long time. But Israel, just like everything else that's happening through the countries they control, has worked its way into this conversation, or maybe it's been there the entire time. The last time we talked about this was when Elon Musk was trying to manipulate the election through Twitter and was trying to lie about what happened, and he got caught lying many times. The point was that the person they wanted in power was literally publicly backed by Israel, wrote a letter to Israel asking them to regime change the government. See, it's not me trying to make these force in. It is the conversation. It's happening. It's right in front of you. So I just think it's interesting, the people who support it. And Trump just recently shot, as he says, shot out a drug-carrying boat from Venezuela. Now, I'm willing to bet you that this has evolved in the last hour. Let me know if you see anything else. This is just rabble. I was just saying, why would the Trump administration shoot the CIA boats? Kind of making a joke, but, CIA has been a prolific trafficker, right? Ask Gary Webb, right? Can't anymore. He shot himself twice in the head, as we're told. The point is clearly that they've been involved. They've been caught many times, Air America and all these. It's not a secret, guys. The Contras. I mean, this is where there's many of these overlapping points. So the joke is about, going after what they're involved with, but really it's about trying to say that the Venezuela is the drug cartel. Okay, well, my point is always, it's just like the lies about the crime in cities. Okay, there is drug trafficking in these countries, but Colombia is leading that situation every year. But they're an ally, so we don't care about that, right? It pales in comparison to what Venezuela does or what happens through that country. And in many cases, you could probably argue it's the CIA doing it in the first place. Overall, it wouldn't surprise me if Maduro was involved with that. I think all governments are capable of all those kind of things. The point overall is that you're being a hypocrite by claiming they're the biggest focus of this drug trafficking when you're supporting the leading drug traffickers in the world. It's just, that's the same thing I do everywhere. We're fighting terrorism, but we're supporting the biggest terrorists in the world. You know, we're fighting Islam, but we're arming the worst ones in the world. It's what they do. It's like, it's their policy. But here is the report from, this is from earlier. This is from middle of the day. Trump says U.S. strike on vessel in Caribbean targeted Venezuela's Tren de Aragua gang. Killed 11. None of this really adds up to me. It says President Trump says Tuesday that the U.S. has carried out a strike on southern Caribbean against a drug-carrying vessel that departed from Venezuela and was operated by Tren de Aragua. No indication of how they knew that. Maybe they were on the ground. I mean, who knows? It's Venezuela, right? So it's not somewhere they're supposed to be operating. You know, and it's also a speedboat. I'll show you. I'll show you this quick so you can see it. That's what we're talking about. A little speedboat. We'll come back to it. And 11 people, and really no indication there's anything in there. It doesn't seem like you can see anything like being trafficked. But again, maybe it's in there somewhere we can't see. My bigger point is, at what point did we just start executing people because of drug trafficking? The same point I made before about even terrorists. I mean, there was a point at which we argued that was the last resort, even for those people that we were supposed to try them and put them on. Not anymore. The president said in a social media post that 11 people were killed in the military operation, and he posted a video of a small vessel appearing to explode in flames. Now, to be clear, I'm not even saying, my opinion in general, by the way, but I'm not even saying that I think that it should go, you know, that we shouldn't kill them. I mean, I don't think that it should be giving them the ability to execute people because of claims will obviously be abused by dishonest governments, which we know has happened. But I mean, my point is not that we should, you know, I mean, it's not about whether we should or shouldn't do that. It's about them lying about doing it. That's the point. But it says, quote, the strike occurred while the terrorists were at sea in international waters, transporting illegal narcotics. Well, so this I find very interesting in and of itself. Okay, so maritime law and all that, right? Whose law jurisdiction are they supposed to be under while they're in a boat in the middle of the ocean? I mean, think about that. Not even every country's drug laws line up. So in what world does the U.S. government think that it can dictate or put its U.S. law on international waters and enforce that law everywhere in the world? These are very important questions to be asking yourself. We're going to come back to this because I don't feel like this is going away. Like, I think this is going to develop over the next couple of weeks. He says, no U.S. forces were harmed. Please let this serve as the notice to anybody for even thinking about bringing drugs that will just kill people. Right. The belligerence of the U.S. government is very clear today. The video, which is, and by the way, if you think it's about drug trafficking, you're missing the entire point. The video, which is largely in black and white, which, by the way, is also always the point. You know they've got better technology than that, right? So ask yourself why we always get these grainy, hard-to-read videos, because they don't want you to get details. They don't want you to be able to see what they're holding, what their name tags say. You know, what? I'm just hypothetical. Because those things give you more details. And you'll probably end up finding out that they weren't what they were claiming. Gut, obviously. It says, it's not clear enough to see if the craft is carrying as many as 11 people. It doesn't look like it to me, by the way. The videos also did not show any large or clear stashes of drugs inside the boat. It says the White House did not immediately explain how the military determined that those people were Tren de Aragua. The U.S. recently announced plans to boost its maritime force in the waters off Venezuela to combat threats from Venezuelan drug cartels. So it very well could be that they just bombed a boat to be able to give you the argument they're going after drug cartels, because that's not even remotely what they're going to be doing. But this sets the tone as, see, we're going after drug cartels. So then we can look the other direction and pretend that's what's happening. You know, here's thoughts that come jump into my head. Overall, you know they're capable of that. And again, I don't think they care about drugs, guys. Your government has shown that pretty much consistently over its entire existence. They care about using it to control your life. They sure as hell don't care about giving people drugs or flooding other countries with drugs. Like, they don't care about drugs. And on top of that, especially from a libertarian perspective, which is what a lot of the Republican side pretends they are right now, you're not supposed to care about it either. but suddenly Trump does it, so we have to care if drugs are bad, right? Maduro has insisted that the U.S. is building a false drug trafficking narrative to try to force him out of office, which, by the way, that has happened. Like, you know, that's been the case from multiple administrations, whether drugs or other narratives, for decades. So it's kind of it's kind of obvious to acknowledge that's most likely what's happening based on their history. But the latest UN World Drug Report shows that various countries in South America, including Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, all of them reported larger cocaine seizures in 2022 than did in, like, okay, Many places have a larger drug problem, but they don't care about it because they don't have an interest in them, at least right now. That's what's really going on. We need to be honest about what these government people do left and right all the time. Dave DeCamp. Here's Trump's post. Military forces conducted a kinetic strike against positively identified Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists. Otherwise, just people that sell drugs. Narco-terrorism makes it feel more official. In the Southcom area. Tren de Aragua is a designated foreign terrorist organization. No, yes, that's how broken this has gotten. So they can just declare a group they don't like that they want to use to justify what's happening in their immigration policy as an insurrection, invasion, and however they want to muddily break that down. And now they just go on calling it a terrorist organization. So therefore they can bomb them without any due process. It's just this rampant lawlessness. Now, that's the wrong term, by the way. Just in process is what I really meant to say. Like just the idea that you can just execute these people without ever verifying your claims are true in international waters where your laws don't apply. That's piracy, guys. That's what it is. The strike resulted in 11 terrorists killed. No U.S. forces were harmed. I already read most of it. Dave DeCamp. Trump claims that the strike targeted members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. He also claims the gang is, quote, under the control of Nicolas Maduro. But that contradicts a declassified U.S. intelligence memo that says Maduro's government doesn't control Tren de Aragua, which is the truth. We made this point back when it got exposed, like in the beginning of the whole thing with Venezuela and El Salvador. Remember what the claim was? Maduro refused to let they lied about that. He came out and said that's not true. And it came out very clearly in the overlapping report information that he did not control Tren de Aragua and that the U.S. government acknowledged that. That the whole lie blew up in their face. They don't care because mindless partisan followers don't need facts to back up their mindless partisan followee, the person they're following. Anyway, very, very ridiculous that this is even being, again, even if they were what they claimed, this should be outrageous. Adam, not familiar, Isaacson says lethal force against a civilian vessel in international waters is a crime, a war crime, if not in self-defense. So even if it was trafficking drugs, this is my point from before, which this video does not show that they were being attacked. Only non-lethal actions like warning shots or disabling fire are allowed. Remember in the past, they would, take them down and then arrest them and seize the drugs? Nope. Now we'll never even know whether they were lying about it or not, which is probably the point. He says, being suspected of carrying drugs doesn't carry a death sentence. But it did today. How do we know that's what happened? How do we know that's not some asset that Israel wanted taken out? We don't know because they would do that and lie to you about it. We all know that. Now, lastly, I want you to see this. Greg Stoker, a veteran, is joining, and I think he's already on, a freedom flotilla. And apparently, if I read it correctly, it's all veterans. At the very least, he is, and I think it's being hard. It's been called out by Israel already. I'm curious to see how this goes. Either way, they have every right, like everybody else does in this context, to bring food to an area they tell you is totally not in an open-air prison, right? But they won't, as they starve them. This has been going on for so long. The Freedom Flotilla Coalition is about bringing food. That's what they're doing. Now, it's Greg's leading in all that. It's right there. All veterans ship to break the genocidal siege of Gaza. Here's what he says, and then we'll finish with a couple of the points that I think are, well, I should show you this one first. Greg posted this. This would mean, Ben-Gvir pushes for, look at that, terrorist-level detention of Gaza-bound flotilla activists. Right. So Ben-Gvir is saying they're terrorists. Why? So he can treat them like terrorists. Funny, look, they all play from the same playbook, it seems. And he says this would mean kidnapping U.S. veterans on a humanitarian mission, enshrined in international law. They really don't care. And placing them in a terror dungeon. I would remind the minister that he's the only person in this conversation who was convicted of terrorism. Well done. That's only going to make him more angry. And the evidence of the fact that your government won't care about you is that somebody like Joe Meters, who was a veteran, who was literally on the USS Liberty. You could watch it for yourself. It's only 30 seconds. It was the video that they all make before they go, knowing they're likely going to get taken by Israel, that says, if you're seeing this, I've been taken by Israel. That's what happened. And he talks about being a veteran for the USS Liberty or on the USS Liberty. And, you can watch other videos where he openly discusses how he knows Israel did that and he knows the US covered it up. They took him in prison and held him for a really long time. I forget. I think it was like a month or something. And the US government didn't say a word. It's just disgusting. It really is disgusting. Your government doesn't care about you, especially when you bump up against Israel. So here's the clip from Greg.
Kills himself every 15 minutes in the United States. You know, holdover from a war that we didn't need, had no business being in. And one of the reasons I'm on this flotilla is because a lot of people see, you know, Palestine or what happens in the Middle East, conflicts in the Middle East is just, that's what happens over there with those people. You know, what can I do about it, right? You know, because of the 20 years of the global war on terror, people have been normalized. Like having military engagements in West Asia is just kind of what happens. And how does it affect them? So I'm on this flotilla to use my status as a veteran to say, like, hey, whatever violence we do overseas, whatever forms of repression and colonialism, immediately get implemented back in the States. The same technology used to enforce occupation and apartheid through AI targeting programs.
We just talked about this with ICE. All of the major tools they're currently using in the technological direction have first been tested in Gaza, and they're now being used on you. I'm pretty sure you can piece together that obvious connection, that whatever they're doing there will come next to you. And it's not like an absolute every time, everything. The point is that that's what the current funnel looks like. That it's building there, they're testing it there, and it's being rolled out in front of you here for the same kind of control over your life.
Spyware, mass drone warfare is coming to is actually already at a local police department near you. So if we accept the premise that there's a fascist takeover happening in Washington, D.C. and extending out through the entire continental United States, it started over here. It started with, you know, the expansion of the police state after 9/11 and the national security state after 9/11, and it's only getting worse. And people need to understand that whatever our government is willing to do to Palestinians, they're willing to do to you. They just can't do it yet.
Sadly, well put. So again, he is on this flotilla, and at some point it's going to, I mean, almost guaranteed to be taken by Israel, like everyone has in the past. Now, it's up in the air what will actually happen. Whether or not they'll be stupid enough to do something serious, it is that they are veterans. So, I mean, look, by legal right, they have the ability to defend themselves if they're being boarded as piracy. But I doubt they'll take it to that level because I don't think the Freedom Coalition wants that, right? Like but we'll see. I mean, I hope that nothing happens because there seems to be zero accountability for this government, even when they're attacking Americans, which I'm hoping the America First people out there can start to recognize. But we will end. We saw Joe Meters, right? These are all Americans. We just saw others taken, same point, with yet again the reiteration of the reality that as of right this moment, an American citizen, a child, is still in Israeli prison because he went to go visit his family in West Bank and is taken and is now in prison, has lost 20 pounds, has scabies. I haven't heard a single word from your U.S. government. They'll stand up and scream about an Israeli American that has a problem over anywhere else, but not an American citizen who is literally in Israeli prison. Or, you know, or the overlap that we made before. An Israeli government entity can go over to rape children in the United States. They'll let him freely walk away. And an American goes to visit his family. Israel locks him up in prison and they don't say a word. You know, the tale of two stories here, guys, the tale of two citizenships. Recognize what's happening as they roll these things out, as Trump floats the idea of going after Americans, as they undermine constitutional realities everywhere. It's not hard to see what's happening. I mean, Greg made a really good point there about how this all builds together, right? Whether it's the constitutional removal, you know, undermining, it's the building out of the AI infrastructure, the surveillance, right? The different moves of the rolling out of the police state. I mean, all these things are being incrementally done to roll this out in one idea. It's not hard to see. And as it builds there, it's building back here. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you for tuning in today. I just really hope people continue to find the courage, dig down deep to do what you know is right. I know it can be tough, especially if you're, you know, absorbed into some partisan circle. But I'd like to believe you care about the truth, like a lot of the pretend media out there likes to claim, more so than you do about your team. I mean, I don't know in what world you can be watching what's going on and still pretending like that's more important, but maybe that's just me. But thank you for being here today. Thank you for continuing to fight. Stand up for what you believe in. This platform is always under attack, so the more support you can send, the more we'll continue to put out content, continue to put out more. And like we said, by the way, there's more articles going to be coming this month, more content put out. We're pushing back, as always. Thank you for being here. I love you all, as always. Question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
We have to condemn the atrocities that happen every day to Palestinians in the West Bank. You mentioned sexual violence. I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape, of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque Bia in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believe they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity. I think it is vital that atrocities not happen to anyone, not sexual violations, not any kind of gross violation of human rights. We are looking at a situation where there is so much dehumanification, where people are